Chapter 64, Deadly Sword. Some people have a high status in society and do not have to worry for money. It's also possible to use some profound pills to increase one's strength and move up in the hierarchy. I could use profound pills and trade for better weapons to increase my strength. As far as I am concerned, I do not have an influential background and I can only rely on my own strength, thought Lin Feng. His future on the path of cultivation was too important to him. There were many commitments he had in this life. If Lin Feng wanted to succeed, he had to put in more effort than anyone else. Effort was not all he needed though, some luck was also necessary. He also needed people supporting him if he wanted to advance quickly. It seemed like life was going to be full of hardships. In life there would be a great deal of injustice, not everyone and everything could be partial and fair. However, to someone who put in more work than anyone else it would eventually show its rewards and eventually make life easier. If your natural abilities were too low, hard work coupled with perseverance and willpower could be enough to lead a luxurious and comfortable life. However, not only were Lin Feng's natural abilities not low, he was an incredible genius with latent potential hidden within his body. Since this was the case, how could he not acquire great power and wealth to one day live a comfortable life? While thinking of all these things, Lin Feng started moving. Not so long after, he encountered an abominable rhinoceros eating a small ferocious beast. There was blood everywhere on the ground and the whole scene was painted red with blood. It was a gruesome scene. The ferocious beast Qi which was surrounding his body vanished and Lin Feng started walking slowly and carefully towards the scene. As if it was aware that something was approaching him, the abominable rhinoceros turned around. Its bloodthirsty eyes were staring at Lin Feng. It looked brutal, ferocious, and bloodthirsty. Its pupils were huge and dark as its gaze pierced through Lin Feng. There was surprisingly someone in the world who was foolish and dared to step within its territory. The abominable rhinoceros was naturally strong, cruel, and bloodthirsty. Once it had reached adulthood, it was a first-class Ling-level ferocious beast. It could reach a length of 2 meters and a height of 1 meter. It was a giant but sturdy ferocious beast. That abominable rhinoceros looked like it had just reached adulthood. It was thus a first-rank Ling-level ferocious beast. The abominable rhinoceros is quick, its horn is extremely sharp, but its strength lies in its natural defense abilities. An ordinary cultivator who is at the first Ling Qi layer could never defeat it. Lin Feng was trying to remember all the characteristics of an abominable rhinoceros. It was impossible to easily break through its defense. Only with enough speed and a precise strike could a cultivator hope to defeat this ferocious beast, otherwise fighting it would lead to their death. At that moment, the abominable rhinoceros was stamping its foot on the ground. A hole appeared under its feet. It was getting ready to charge forward at any moment. Lin Feng was still incredibly relaxed as he watched the situation. A strong sword Qi was released from his body and had begun to fill the atmosphere. Before the ferocious beast could even start its charge, Lin Feng had already thrown himself towards it. Following each of Lin Feng's step, the sword Qi which he was releasing increased and became stronger. A few steps later, the air was filled with a whistling sound. The hair which was covering the body of the abominable rhinoceros stood completely on end and suddenly it roared loudly and retreated. Ling-level ferocious wild beasts were very intelligent and had advanced instincts. It sensed the incredibly powerful sword force which was hidden and knew that the human in front of him would be extremely dangerous to fight. Moonlight feather agility. Lin Feng couldn't let it escape. He dashed through the air at full speed and his sword was glowing with a radiant light. One strike, one life. The sword force completely filled the atmosphere. A white light was being emitted from the tip of the sword. The running abominable rhinoceros had a cut which had appeared on its body but it continued to run forwards. Blood was rushing out of its body and left a long thick trail of blood behind it as it ran. It was badly injured and was losing large amounts of blood. Some poisonous qi started flowing out from the body of the rhinoceros. Lin Feng thrust his sword into the qi and in an instant the qi had vanished. The abominable rhinoceros was dead. Ferocious beasts were extremely sensitive to blood. In the Black Wind Mountain, there were too many extremely strong ferocious beasts. Therefore, Lin Feng would need to quickly kill the abominable rhinoceros and would then leave, otherwise the blood would attract too many ferocious beasts who would be attracted by the blood. Lin Feng was extremely satisfied with his sword skills and the power unleashed with each strike. Even though the abominable rhinoceros was extremely strong and its body was tough, its body had suffered lethal injuries from a single strike with Lin Feng's sword. As Lin Feng continued to move through the mountain, Lin Feng killed another Ling-level ferocious wild beast, but this time it wasn't the abominable rhinoceros but an earth-shaking bear. As before, Lin Feng killed it in one strike. 2 days later, on the outskirts of the Black Wind Mountain, a young man had appeared and all of his clothes were torn and dirty. He was filthy from head to toe. He was carrying a sword in his hand and in front of him, there was a gigantic snake. That snake was about 20 meters long. Its extremely thick body was slithering on the ground towards the young man. Its head was 5 meters up in the air. It looked hideous and ferocious. It looked like it was ready to strike at any moment. Its gigantic eyes were green and were filled with murderous light. Poison and blood was endlessly spraying from its mouth. A second-level Ling ferocious wild beast is incredibly hard to deal with as expected. Lin Feng's robes had a large hole through which one could see his skin where he had been struck. He was bruised and the area had turned dark purple. Lin Feng was worn out from this fight. Lin Feng had been injured by fighting with that python of darkness. During these 2 days, Lin Feng had killed around 100 ferocious beasts, all at the Ling level. He had killed a few second-level Ling ferocious beasts as well, but it was the first time that he came across such a strong and dangerous ferocious beast. SSSSSSS, SSSSSSS. Its huge tongue was flickering through the air while it continues to hiss. The snake was spitting out poison and Lin Feng would have to constantly avoid the poison from the snake. But at that moment, the huge python of darkness fell down and its head crashed into the ground. This was because its tail had been damaged and pinned by a tree which had fallen down onto it. The snake couldn't avoid it. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind had filled the air. If Lin Feng didn't have good agility techniques, he would have already been killed. The second-level Ling python of darkness was incredibly strong and powerful. Suddenly, the space in front of Lin Feng filled with light and slashed down onto the python before vanishing from sight again. The snake emitted an extremely loud moan. Lin Feng had felt like he was being oppressed by the power of the snake. The python of darkness kept moving towards him. Boom! 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 The trees were cracking as the python was crushing everything on its path. Lin Feng was like a shadow in the sun and was too fast for the snake to catch him. If there was an observer, he would think that the snake had gone mad and was chasing an illusion. Even though the python of darkness was only the second level of the Ling level, even an extremely strong cultivator of the third Ling Qi layer would find it difficult to escape with his life. They knew it would be extremely difficult to kill the snake and would never directly confront it. However, Lin Feng had just reached the second Ling Qi layer 2 days before and was not aware of how dangerous the python was. "Deadly sword," shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, his extremely strong and powerful sword thrust towards the python of darkness which cut through its body leaving it severely bleeding. But this time it seemed like the snake hadn't felt the strike connect with its body. It wanted Lin Feng's life and had gone into a complete frenzy. "I'm not playing with you anymore." Lin Feng had almost gotten killed by the python of darkness multiple times already. After 2 days continuously fighting within this mountain, his sword skills had already become much stronger than before. He had even more confidence in his own ability. He was convinced that he would be able to defeat almost any cultivator in the second Ling Qi layer. After all, how many cultivators of the second Ling Qi layer were stronger than the python of darkness? Lin Feng released the first layer of his celestial spirit. His eyes became pitch black and he was surrounded by a world of darkness. Nothing could escape from his vision, he could see and feel everything. Even if the snake was extremely quick, its attack seemed slow to the Lin Feng that now stood before it. The snake was about to attack from the side. Lin Feng was firmly holding his soft sword, which emitted an ice-cold light. A deadly sword chi emanated from Lin Feng's body. It looked like it could destroy anything it touched. Lin Feng raised his head. He calmly looked at the python of darkness that was moving towards him. Lin Feng's eyes looked like that of a brutal demon. At that moment, he was extremely heartless and there was not an ounce of mercy left inside him. Deadly sword. Lin Feng had faintly said those words. His mouth had barely moved. He wielded his long sword which was releasing a strong chi as well as a strange grey chi. It was a deadly chi. TSSS, TSSS, the extremely powerful grey chi moved very quickly and was accompanied by a long and painful screech. That strike had cut the snake cleanly into two halves. A cloud of dust rose into the air and the snake hit the ground. The body of the python of darkness was still writhing on the ground as if it did not believe it was dead. Lin Feng used his long sword to pierce through the python's skull and with that action it had completely stopped moving. The atmosphere had become calm once more. Lin Feng had managed to kill the python of darkness, a second-level Ling ferocious beast. Deadly sword. Lin Feng's sword could truly be called deadly after being bathed in blood these 2 days in the Black Wind Mountain. Lin Feng stepped forward and picked up the precious items from the body of the python of darkness, then left towards the sect. 2 days and the flood of ferocious beasts had already strongly decreased to the point that it wasn't a flood anymore. It also seemed that the elite disciple exam was about to start in the upcoming days. The sudden ferocious beast flood had disappeared as fast as it had come. At the edge of the Black Wind Mountain there were only a few chi-layer ferocious beasts and a great quantity of dead ferocious beasts. The sudden ferocious beast flood had disappeared as fast as it had come. At the edge of the Black Wind Mountain there were only a few chi-layer ferocious beasts and a great quantity of dead ferocious beasts. Of course, there weren't only carcasses of ferocious beasts, there were also human corpses which showed that some disciples had lost their lives while fighting against the flood of ferocious beasts. Streams of blood were flowing endlessly on the ground, making a river of blood which was flowing down the mountain. It showed how terrible and fierce the flood of ferocious beasts had been to have caused such a scene. It had been mostly weaker ferocious beasts in that flood. If there had been a flood of stronger ferocious beasts, what would have happened to the sect? At the base of the mountain there was still a great deal of Yun Hai Sect disciples. The majority of these disciples were ordinary disciples who were fighting against chi-layer ferocious beasts. They were using the battle to develop their skills while also gathering precious items. Ha, there is a ferocious beast of the Ling level, try to prevent it from leaving and then I will kill it. At that moment, a clear and bright voice spread throughout the atmosphere followed by an extremely loud laughter. Some people saw that there were 2 Yun Hai ordinary disciples were fighting together against a ferocious beast of the Ling level. Actually, they had an abominable rhinoceros in front of them. Between them and the abominable rhinoceros, there were carcasses of ferocious beasts. The 2 ordinary disciples seemed to be ignoring them. They were focused completely on the opponent in front of them and were filled with greed from the precious items they could receive from its body. The abominable rhinoceros is extremely strong and its strongest point is its defense. "Do you think you can kill it?" said a thin young man. His name was Pajun. He was staring at the abominable rhinoceros whose eyes looked bloodthirsty and violent. "Don't worry, Pajun, don't you believe in my abilities?" The thin young man named Pajun simply grinned at the other disciple. The other disciple seemed really confident in his abilities. "The only person I trust is myself," said Pajun. But at the same time, he grabbed 2 rattans that he was carrying and threw them at the abominable rhinoceros to bind it in place. RRRHMMPPHH, the abominable rhinoceros was enraged and tried to move around but it seemed to be unable to move freely, it was growing more and more furious over time. Pajun was being whipped back and forth by the beast but he still had a calm composure. He was holding the rattans steadily, trying to use them to bind the abominable rhinoceros. He was managing to lock the abominable rhinoceros in place. "Attack now," yelled Pajun. There was no need to shout this as his friend was already there, attacking the abominable rhinoceros within the blink of an eye. The abominable rhinoceros was stamping on the ground heavily, which made a cloud of dust rise into the air. It was going into a frenzy. Pajun's friend carried out an extremely strong attack on the rhinoceros using both his palms. The abominable rhinoceros roared extremely loudly. One strike had been enough for the beast to meet a brutal and instant death. "Pajun, how was that? Was it a mistake to cooperate with me?" asked the strong young man while smiling. At that moment, Pajun had already stepped forward and started removing all of the precious items from the corpse. "When you've broken through to the Ling Qi layer, it's really a different level. Your spirit gives enough strength to deal with some opponents," thought Lin Feng, who saw that Pajun had used rattans. Obviously, that was his spirit. It was similar to Mo Xie's spirit. Of course, Mo Xie's strength and Pajun's strength were not on the same level though. I would have never thought that this guy's strength had improved so much. Lin Feng was smiling. He then moved forwards to the two young people who were picking up their precious items. "Who?" At that moment, Pajun quickly turned around. An extremely strong qi quickly burst out of his body and his two rattans started moving towards Lin Feng. "Huh?" Lin Feng was surprised. He hadn't thought that Pajun's defense perimeter was so wide and that he'd attack so quickly upon sensing someone moving closer to them. Lin Feng stepped aside really quickly and a strong sword qi emerged from his body, directly crashing down onto Pajun, making him almost suffocate from the intense pressure. "Pajun, stop it, he's my friend," the strong young disciple said quickly as he had turned around and saw the scene in front of him. At that moment, Pajun recalled the rattans back and the qi which was suffocating him had vanished as well. He remained vigilant and kept watching Lin Feng very closely. "That guy, he is incredibly strong." "Ha, Lin Feng, you're finally showing yourself. I came to look for you more than a dozen times and I couldn't find you anywhere. I thought you had left the Yun Hai Sect forever." It turned out that that strong young disciple was Lin Feng's friend. "Han Man, I just came back a little while ago," said Lin Feng while smiling before adding, "Han Man, you're now able to kill a ferocious beast of the Ling level. You have progressed so fast." When Lin Feng had left for Yangzhou City, at that time Han Man was only at the 8th Qi layer. In that short amount of time, Han Man had surprisingly broken through to the Ling Qi layer. Lin Feng was astonished. He was, of course, also extremely happy for Han Man. He did not have many friends, but he would definitely count Han Man as one of them. "Ha, I've broken through to the Ling Qi layer, but I was just lucky this time," Han Man said while scratching his head, and then continued, "Oh, anyway, how about you, Lin Feng? You used to be much stronger than me. How strong have you become now?" "I'm just an average disciple," said Lin Feng with a big teasing smile on his face. Lin Feng was looking at Han Man's friend, Pajun. That guy had an ice-cold expression on his face. He looked like he was ready to strike Lin Feng if he made the wrong move. If that was the case, it could make things complicated and unpredictable for Han Man. "Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce the two of you. Lin Feng, this is Pajun. He's extremely strong, but he's discreet and very reserved, unlike the ordinary disciples who consider themselves the best because of some ranking. He is also much stronger than them," Han Man said as he was smiling while introducing them to each other. "Pajun, this is Lin Feng. He is like a brother to me. I hope you can become good friends with him as well. I'm first taking the precious items we have just obtained," said Pajun while looking cold and indifferently. Then, he turned around and continued what he was doing. He took out a dagger and split the beast open to harvest the materials which could be traded into the sect. "Lin Feng, don't worry, Pajun just has that kind of personality. He's a very cold person, but he is a good guy." Lin Feng ignored it and kept smiling. Pejun and Lin Feng were not friends, so it didn't matter if Pejun did not interact with him. There was no need to get offended by a stranger's behavior. Han Man, everybody has started to leave, how come you are still out here fighting? Many of them have left because of the elite disciple exam. As we were already here, we thought we should get some more precious items to trade with the sect. We are the only 2 remaining Ling Qi layer in the surrounding area, so there should not be a problem. All that remains are Qi layer disciples. Are you not getting ready for the elite disciple exam? Lin Feng was stupefied and couldn't help but ask. Of course, I'll join. I'm not late yet. I still have some time to collect more riches. Hee hee. Han Man was the same guy as before, always smiling and positive. Lin Feng sometimes had the impression he was talking to a simple-minded person, but at least these kinds of people were honest and true to themselves. They were not the kind of people to have evil intentions in their hearts, and they are easy to get along with. Pejun, it's alright, there is nothing of value in the area and I doubt we have missed something. Han Man said while looking at Pejun. Alright, let's leave. Pejun said while nodding. He picked up the bag full of precious items and stood up. Lin Feng, you should leave too. Let's go back together, said Han Man to Lin Feng, and then asked, Lin Feng, come on, tell me, how strong are you now? Lin Feng thought for a while and then shook his head. He was actually unable to clearly identify his own strength. Maybe he had to fight against someone of the 3rd Ling Qi layer to correctly judge his current level of strength. You really enjoy being mysterious, and keep so many things secret from me. Can you cope with an abominable rhinoceros or not? Asked Han Man, whose curiosity had become unbearable. He needed to know. Cope with an abominable rhinoceros alone, thought Pejun when he heard Han Man ask that question. Lin Feng's strength was certainly of the Ling Qi layer. A moment ago, the qi from Lin Feng's sword had almost made him suffocate and created immense pressure on his body. Pejun would have probably been defeated by Lin Feng in an instant if they had fought, and Pejun was sure that he would not even be using his full strength. Pejun could not measure how strong this young man was. Even though the abominable rhinoceros had extremely high defense abilities, Lin Feng had had no problem killing one using his sword. I should be able to handle it, said Lin Feng while touching his nose. Dealing with an abominable rhinoceros? He had required only 1 hit to deal a lethal blow on one previously, but even then it did not require him to use his full strength. Hee hee, you obviously have broken through to the Ling Qi layer. This time, we 3 will probably pass the elite disciple exam and all become elite disciples. After that, we will be able to work hard and become pillars of the Yun Hai Sect, said Han Man joyfully with a big smile on his face. 3 disciples of the Ling Qi layer, they would probably be able to accomplish great things if they worked together. Work hard for the sect. Whose decision is that? Asked Pejun tactlessly. He thought that Han Man was really naive. We should let Lin Feng decide. He's a real genius and he has a much greater potential than me. Even though he may be weaker than me now, he will probably surpass my power later. He's always been there to protect the weak. He saved my life. Whatever he says, I will always listen to him, said Han Man, sounding extremely simple-minded. What about me? Asked Pejun. You and I are very strong, but since I listened to Lin Feng, you should obviously listen to Lin Feng as well, said Han Man, which sounded extremely simple and completely illogical. Lin Feng was speechless and was looking at him while stupefied. That guy was so naive and his thoughts were so simple. Pejun would never be convinced by such naive statements. Who would? In the stormy gorge, a huge crowd had gathered which almost seemed endless. The crowd had gathered in front of the life and death arena. They were all young disciples of the Yun Hai Sect who were excitedly talking amongst themselves. There was such a larger number of disciples that they were all standing shoulder to shoulder. Looking down from above, it looked like thousands upon thousands of ants. In the stormy gorge, a huge crowd had gathered which almost seemed endless. The crowd had gathered in front of the life and death arena. They were all young disciples of the Yun Hai Sect who were excitedly talking amongst themselves. There was such a larger number of disciples that they were all standing shoulder to shoulder. Looking down from above, it looked like thousands upon thousands of ants. On the top of the cliff surrounding the gorge there was also a large crowd of people looking down at the gorge. They were all staring at the people in the arena. These people all had sharp expressions on their faces. There was a powerful qi which was filling the atmosphere around the arena. There were some people within the gorge who were extremely strong compared to the average disciple of the sect. They were the high-level disciples of the sect. Nan Gongling, many years ago, was one of those disciples. Nan Gongling sat in the middle of the high-level Yun Hai Sect disciples and elders. Those participating in the elite disciple exam were some of the most important disciples of the Yun Hai Sect. It was the first time in many years that there were so many ordinary disciples who would attend elite disciple exam. Some of them were going to become elite disciples within the sect, and some of the strongest participants could even become core disciples. Of course, some of them were going to be eliminated from the exam altogether. That was the rule: fight and win or be eliminated. Ordinary disciples who sat the exam might have to fight with the current elite disciples. The battles were randomly arranged. If the ordinary disciple won, he would probably be chosen to become an elite disciple. If an elite disciple lost, he lost face and reputation. On the same basis, if an elite disciple wanted to become a core disciple, he would then need to fight a core disciple and win. If an elite disciple could defeat a core disciple, then he could become one of the core disciples and would definitely gain a lot of prestige and recognition from the high-ranking members of the Yun Hai Sect. The rules were very simple. You would have to fight repeatedly. Fighting an elite disciple would enable an ordinary disciple a chance at promotion. There were people at the elite disciple exam who had big arrogant smiles on their face from winning, and there were others who looked depressed as they were eliminated. It was the first time in the year that all of the ordinary disciples, elite disciples, and the core disciples were present in one place. It was the second time this year that the ordinary, elite and core disciples were going to be ranked. No matter if it was an ordinary, an elite or a core disciple whose ranking was in the top 10, he would gain an infinite amount of prestige within the sect. Furthermore, the disciples who showed the most potential and placed at the top would receive great rewards such as precious stones, weapons, profound pills, or maybe even extremely powerful skill books. Obviously, the elite disciples and core disciples who would get eliminated or not obtain a good ranking would be humiliated. If the disciple had bad luck, then the opponent could be very strong and humiliation would be inevitable. This is why all disciples would fight with their utmost power if they wanted to achieve the best results. Losing because of underestimating an opponent would bring shame and humiliation. Lin Feng and his group had arrived at the life and death arena. When they arrived, the elite disciple exam had already started. Coincidentally, ordinary disciples were challenging elite disciples. At that moment, two people were fighting on the rocky stage of the life or death arena. The fight was very intense and the crowd continued to discuss the battle as they watched it very closely. "It's Liu Fei," she said earlier that she had broken through to the Ling Qi layer. Obviously it's true. She's very pretty, and on top of that she's incredibly strong and powerful. "I wish she could become my wife in the future," said Han Man, who was looking at the battle of Liu Fei while laughing. Liu Fei was a dream for many of the young disciples. They all wanted her to become their lover. Liu Fei was famous for being extremely beautiful in the Yun Hai Sect. Many of the young disciples would spend their entire lives within the sect and would even take a wife from the sect. This is why many men were courting her, including some geniuses and even core disciples. The rumors said that Liu Fei was pretty and that she was a real genius. In other words, she was amazing. "Ha, go ahead and ask her to become your wife," Lin Feng said while laughing at Han Man. That simpleton had even dared to imagine such a thing. Liu Fei was too much of a tomboy for him. She was violent and stubborn, he would not last a second. "Hee, I think that I'm pretty strong, but I don't think I'd manage to court her," said Han Man while laughing and scratching his head. He then continued, while looking at Lin Feng, and said, "By the way, Lin Feng, I heard that you got along quite well with Liu Fei. She's very beautiful and you're very handsome, you are both geniuses, you would definitely be a perfect couple. Me? Asked Lin Feng with a shiver running down his spine. He shrugged his shoulders and shook away the feeling from that shiver. He was so scared that it may become reality that he would have trouble sleeping later that night. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the people around. His attention focused on a particular person. Mo Xia, during this elite disciple exam, I will take care of you, thought Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He had precisely rushed to the exam because of Mo Xia. It looked like Mo Xia could feel a dark premonition and felt like darkness itself was staring at him. He stopped looking at the arena and observed the crowd. He was glancing at everyone trying to find the source of his premonition. At that moment, Liu Fei released her spirit and effortlessly won the battle. Her bow and arrows were radiating a brilliant light as she stepped out of the arena. Lin Feng was looking at her with news eyes. For Liu Fei, joining the elite disciples wouldn't be something which would make her extremely proud. She looked around her and heaved a sigh. She had broken through to the Ling Qi layer and her spirit had awakened. She had the same spirit as her father in the past, but she still couldn't beat the person on her mind. Unfortunately, Lin Feng had gone to gather some precious items and had been killed because of Mo Xia. If he was still here, I could learn so much from him and I would certainly be able to greatly improve my strength. She didn't know why, but Liu Fei suddenly missed Lin Feng, that unconventional and unrestrained genius, but he did have some detestable aspects. If she had the choice, Liu Fei would prefer to be fighting against Lin Feng and winning against him to that of participating in the elite disciple exam and becoming an elite disciple. At the same time, back at the pavilion was Protector Bei, who was staring blankly at the horizon while watching Liu Fei, who had just won her battle. Not bad, Liu Fei, a real genius, but you still have a lot to do before reaching your father's level. It will be hard to achieve his power while not growing in the Imperial City. Protector Bei's thoughts were flowing at full speed. Imperial City, these two words made him shiver, but they were very clear to him. It was a very crowded place. There were lots of political strategies which were involved in the day-to-day life of the city. This was a gathering place for many strong cultivators. Sung Lan was still there to protect her, but if he wasn't, maybe Liu Fei would get into trouble. I wanted to let Lin Feng go to the Imperial City. Not only would he have become more important by moving up in the hierarchy, but it would have also enabled him to fight against stronger cultivators. At the same time, he could have helped Sung Lan, and maybe, he would have met his destiny there. While Protector Bei was thinking these things, he started to grow furious and wanted to kill Mo Xia yet again. Because of Mo Xia, who had killed Lin Feng, Protector Bei slowly realized that his dream was impossible, and these painful thoughts flowed like a stream of blood as his face turned red with anger. Lin Feng didn't know that there were so many people that missed him. At that moment, he noticed someone else. Lin Feng, you're here as well. What a coincidence. Jing Yun was walking towards Lin Feng. Her expression looked fresh and pure like spring. What a great coincidence, said Lin Feng while looking at Jing Yun and smiling. Han Man, Jing Yun and Lin Feng were finally together again after what seemed like an extremely long time. It's not a coincidence, it's called fate, said Han Man smiling. Jing Yun, I am the biggest person in the group, how come you only saw Lin Feng and not me? Lin Feng was glaring at Han Man. That couldn't be true. Who would know someone like you? Asked Jing Yun while pouting. Alright, if you don't know me then I should just go. I am starting to remember that there was a young girl who was waiting for Lin Feng every day, wondering when she would see him again, said Han Man with a fake smile on his face. Lin Feng was speechless. Since when was there a girl like that? How would I know something like that? Replied Jing Yun while blushing. She looked so delicate and charming that it was touching. Han Man couldn't help but burst into laughter. Pa Jun, who was standing next to them, looked at Lin Feng with a wry smile on his face. He was truly heartless to join in and laugh at Lin Feng. You guys, can you shut your filthy mouths? At that moment, a cold voice had shouted at them which had destroyed their good mood. They all looked at the person who had spoken. It was an elite disciple carrying a sword on his back, and he was looking at them with a look of disdain. "Does it look like we were talking to you?" Han Man said furiously. That guy was incredibly impolite, so Han Man could not hold his temper. "You are courting death," said the disciple carrying a sword on his back. A strong chi suddenly emerged from his body. "It's you," said Lin Feng. It was really a huge coincidence. Lin Feng recognized that disciple. It was the elite disciple who had helped Liu Fei during their fight in the Stormy Gorge. It was Yu Hao, the one who said he would kill Lin Feng if Liu Fei asked it of him. He had actually almost killed him twice with that sword on his back. He was extremely strong. Yu Hao was stupefied when he heard Lin Feng. He attentively looked at Lin Feng and then remembered him. He then smiled and said, "Last time, you were lucky that I didn't kill you. Are you that impatient that you want to die now?" "Impatient?" said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He just regretted that he hadn't broken through to the Ling Qi layer on their last meeting, otherwise he would have unsheathed his sword and beheaded Yu Hao. "I am very impatient when it comes to living my life. I have such a long life to live after all," said Lin Feng, smiling coldly with a strangely evil look on his face. "I am very impatient when it comes to living my life. I have such a long life to live after all," said Lin Feng, smiling coldly with a strangely evil look on his face. "He have met many pieces of trash in the past, but I've never met a piece of trash who was so impatient to die," said Yu Hao with extreme arrogance. He then added, "Since you really want to die, I will help you achieve your goal. Wait until the end of the elite disciple exam and then I will deal with you." An ordinary disciple was worth nothing to most people within the sect. They could be killed at a whim and nobody would care, especially when in the life and death arena of the Stormy Gorge. "I will give you an opportunity to kill me before the end of the elite disciple exam," Lin Feng said while nodding his head as if he had come to a decision. Yu Hao was lost and didn't know what Lin Feng meant. Immediately after, Lin Feng started walking towards the life and death arena. "Lin Feng, what are you doing?" Jing Yun shouted as she could feel the fear gripping her heart. "Jing Yun, you have to trust Lin Feng. That guy is always full of surprises," said Han Man to Jing Yun, trying to reassure her. Even though they hadn't been friends for a very long time, Han Man really admired Lin Feng. He was beyond insane, but he was truly a genius. He would fight anyone at the drop of a hat when it came to his friends. Each time they met, Lin Feng did something unpredictable. Jing Yun tried not to worry, but she could only make her heart grow slightly calmer. She looked at Han Man and nodded. That's right, it looked like Lin Feng was going to do something dangerous and unpredictable again. Jing Yun couldn't help but be worried about Lin Feng. Going into the life and death arena and challenging an elite disciple wasn't something one could do easily. If you wanted to become an elite disciple within the sect, then you first had to have an incredible strength. Luck was of no use. To become an elite disciple, the only way was to be stronger than a former elite disciple. Huh? Yu Hao frowned. He hadn't replied yet. Han Man and Jing Yun understood what Lin Feng wanted to do because they were friends with him and could understand him. Besides, Yu Hao was extremely arrogant. How could he imagine what Lin Feng wanted to do? Yu Hao smiled at Liu Fei, who had already made her way out of the arena. He moved towards Liu Fei. Such a beautiful girl needed attention, and who better than him to give it to her? The life and death arena was huge. Disciples could fight against other disciples on different rocky fighting stages. While the battles were randomly picked, they could also fight each other as they wished. However, it seemed like there was an unwritten agreement between everybody to not step onto a fighting stage if there were already too many people fighting. This was also beneficial for the observers as they could only focus on a certain amount of action at once. If everyone started to fight, then it would quickly become chaos. Of course, no one had any plans to step onto the highest stage. Ordinary disciples didn't want to seem too self-confident in their abilities. Overestimating their own powers would give the seniors of the sect a bad impression. Only real geniuses, the most talented disciples, would dare climb onto the highest stage and amaze the entire crowd. At that moment, Wang Mang stepped onto a stage within the life and death arena. But at that moment, he saw that someone else wanted to get onto it as well. "Hey, friend," shouted Wang Mang while smiling at Lin Feng to get his attention. He was the third-ranked ordinary disciple. He was extremely strong and had the arrogance of a ranked disciple who had not seen the world. He assumed that Lin Feng would notice he wanted to get on the stage and would let him go first. But what Wang Mang hadn't planned is that Lin Feng stared at him and nodded to return the greeting while looking indifferent. He then continued walking towards the fighting stage. It really did look like Lin Feng wasn't going to let him go first. Wang Mang frowned. He was extremely famous amongst all the ordinary disciples. He wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng wouldn't give him face and let him go first. He wanted to open his mouth but he was speechless. He was too stupefied at what had happened. He opened his mouth to speak but no words could come out. "Crazy moron," said Wang Mang in a low voice filled with anger. He immediately went back to where he was standing before. That other disciple was heading towards the central fighting stage. How insolent! This was the first time that someone dared to go onto it. Wang Mang wasn't the only one who was surprised, but the entire crowd was stupefied to see someone go on that particular fighting stage. Their eyes were wide open. The crowd burst into an uproar and was wondering who that guy was. It's him. So he wasn't devoured by the imaginary demon. "He's surprisingly still living," said someone who had seen Lin Feng at the moment when he had been consumed by the black fog of the imaginary demon. The person was stupefied to see Lin Feng living and breathing before him. "Oh my! He is insane." Han Man, Jing Yun as well as Pa Jun were all astounded. Lin Feng did not fail to surprise them. However, Han Man had a big smile on his face. He had the feeling that Lin Feng was stronger than him, much stronger than him. He even had that feeling when he hadn't seen Lin Feng. He really admired Lin Feng and believed that he held an incredible strength. In the stormy gorge, Mo Xia was stupefied. How was this possible? How could Lin Feng still be alive? He was just an ordinary disciple and he had been eaten by an imaginary demon. How could he come back alive? It's him. Like everybody else, Nan Gongling was also astonished. His face showed how relieved he was. Now he would be able to tell Protector Bei and Protector Kong that Lin Feng was alright and the punishment of Mo Xia would not be so harsh. "Ha, that young man never dies," said a voice coming from the pavilion where an old man was sitting. It almost sounded like he was cursing, but he was actually very cheerful. "You continue to surprise me, young man," thought Protector Bei smiling. The first time that he had met Lin Feng, he had already had a good impression. The second time, Lin Feng had made the drums of the precipice of Zhanggu beat which had stupefied Protector Kong and Protector Bei, and this time, he had been eaten by an imaginary demon and then returned without a single injury on his body. He really was the king of miracles. At that moment, Yu Hao arrived next to Liu Fei. He looked at Lin Feng who had stepped on the fighting stage and said while laughing, "Fei Fei, that piece of trash surprisingly dares go onto the fighting stage. He really wants to die." Liu Fei frowned. She didn't like Yu Hao calling her by a nickname. She was in a bad mood because of this. Then, she looked at the fighting stage and her expression immediately changed, her beautiful eyes were filled with delight. "He is not dead." Liu Fei was astonished and then a beautiful and resplendent smile appeared on her face. "You're not dead, that's a good thing, I will beat you myself. I will humiliate you." Yu Hao saw that Liu Fei was smiling and looked enchanted but he didn't seem to understand. Then thinking that he could be her hero, he said, "Fei Fei, just like last time, you just need to open your mouth and I'll go kill that piece of trash when he's done with his challenge." "You'll kill him?" Liu Fei asked while looking at Yu Hao. Even though Yu Hao had a sword spirit and was quite strong, he hadn't progressed for a year because he hadn't been practicing. He was still at the first Ling Qi layer. If he fought against Lin Feng, did he even stand a chance? Besides, what Liu Fei wanted the most was to defeat Lin Feng herself. Yes, you only have to nod your head and I'll put an end to his life, said Yu Hao while smiling. Yu Hao. Yu Hao was still smiling when the sound of an annoyed voice went straight into his ears. Yu Hao, where have you run away? Come and fight me, damn you. Lin Feng was standing on the highest fighting stage. He raised his head and looked at everyone who was observing from above on the cliffs of the stormy gorge. He wanted to go to the highest place, the most craziest of places, and look down on the world. Yu Hao was still smiling. He hadn't gone to the fighting stage. He hadn't understood what Lin Feng had meant a moment ago. He did not understand that Lin Feng was actually challenging him to a fight. However, he really wanted to fight with Lin Feng. During the elite disciple exam, being challenged was a humiliation because it meant you were weak. If you were weak, people wanted to fight against you. But at that moment, Yu Hao was being challenged. On top of that, he was being challenged by the one he wanted to kill to win the affection of Liu Fei. However, he hadn't thought that Lin Feng would challenge him right after he finished talking. Obviously, he had just been humiliated in front of a countless number of people. He had the feeling he had just been slapped in the face. Yu Hao's expression looked like that of a demon. He was staring at Lin Feng with a cruel expression. Fei, that guy wants to challenge me, that's great. I'm going to kill that shitty piece of trash. As before, Yu Hao had no doubts about his own strength. He started walking towards the stage while still looking evil. The entire crowd was amazed. Lin Feng was truly insane. Not only had Lin Feng immediately stepped on the highest fighting stage, but he was also challenging Yu Hao. Yu Hao was far from being one of the weakest elite disciples. Before the elite disciple exam, ordinary disciples had already checked the profiles of the different elite disciples. They had access to a list which contained detailed information on their strength levels. Yu Hao was far above the weak elite disciples. He had a sword spirit and he was very talented and strong. He was much stronger than most of the average elite disciples. Nobody would have thought of challenging him. Yu Hao hadn't expected someone to challenge him either. As he moved on to the fighting stage, Yu Hao, while still looking like a demon, said, I wanted to let you live a bit longer but you already want to die, so impatient, I'm in no hurry to deal with you, wait until I am done, said Lin Feng while smiling. He stopped looking at Yu Hao and turned to the crowd. Li Lin, get your ass onto the damn fighting stage as well. Lin Feng continued to spit insults in the faces of elite disciples. Li Lin, while in the Xing Chen pavilion, hadn't dared to confront Chen Chen, so he had decided to take it out on Lin Feng. Lin Feng still remembered and planned to settle his grudge. Everybody in the crowd was astonished at his actions. Li Lin. That was the name of another elite disciple. What did he intend to do by challenging two elite disciples at the same time? During the first round of the elite disciple exam, everyone had to be in attendance, elite disciples as well as core disciples, because they could be challenged at any time by another disciple within the sect. During the first round of the elite disciple exam, everyone had to be in attendance, elite disciples as well as core disciples, because they could be challenged at any time by another disciple within the sect. Li Lin was no exception to this rule. When Li Lin heard that he was being challenged by Lin Feng, his heart was pounding. That guy had probably broken through to the Ling Qi layer and wanted his revenge. But then Li Lin tried to relax because Lin Feng hadn't only called his name, instead he had called too, his name and Yu Hao's. Yu Hao was infinitely stronger than Li Lin. He had a overpowering sword spirit and he was known as a genius. Lin Feng had even dared to challenge him, but he was probably going to die because he could not fight against Yu Hao. When entering the life and death arena, Li Lin started to get nervous. When he saw that everybody was looking at him, he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. What are you doing? Why are you making him come onto the fighting stage as well? Asked Yu Hao, glancing at Li Lin. He was puzzled. Besides, he despised being associated with a weakling like Li Lin. I will fight both of you at the same time. Lin Feng didn't reply to Yu Hao and just said these words in a cold tone which made Yu Hao frown in anger. Insanity. Madness. In the entire history of the Yun Hai Sect, which dated back 1,000 years, nobody had ever dared challenge two higher-ranked disciples at the same time during the elite disciple exam. Lin Feng, a simple ordinary disciple, had challenged two elite disciples to fight against him. To make things even more shocking, one of them was an extremely strong cultivator who had a sword spirit. Lin Feng had broken a new record of insane behavior. That ordinary disciple is so arrogant and clearly overestimates his own power, even if he is incredibly strong. Is it right to act in such a way? Mo Xia had said that in a cold and belittling tone. Not only was Mo Xia very strong, but he also had a high status within the sect. Besides, his father Mo Tsanglan was standing behind him. Therefore, he was trying to regain some of the face he had already lost. Nan Gongling was coldly looking at Mo Xia but remained expressionless. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Regarding Protector Bei, he was just laughing and shaking his head. This young man really has no limits. Together? Who do you think you are, you piece of trash? Yu Hao's face twisted in anger and revealed a hideous expression. What kind of person was he after all? A sword master with a strong sword spirit, and he was an elite disciple? Yu Hao despised Lin Feng. He thought that Lin Feng was an insolent piece of trash. He thought that comparing the two was the difference between earth and heaven. Yu Hao thought that it was an honor for Lin Feng to call a noble person such as himself onto the stage. But Lin Feng had not only called him onto the stage. He had also called someone else. Surprisingly, he wanted to fight against two people at the same time. Wasn't Yu Hao being humiliated from his actions? Exactly. What are you thinking? Suddenly challenging both of us at the same time. Yu Hao has an extremely strong sword spirit. He's very powerful and can kill you with a single strike. How can you be so arrogant? Li Lin was licking Yu Hao's boots and trying to gain favor from Yu Hao. Then, Yu Hao would do all the work alone and defeat Lin Feng while he could just stand and watch. Then he would not have to fight at all. This was obviously the best choice for someone like him who was incredibly weak for an elite disciple. Yu Hao seemed to enjoy being complimented by others. A big smile had appeared on his face and he then said, "Haha, Li Lin, you're entirely right. It's not worth unsheathing my sword for such a worthless ordinary disciple. You help me take care of him." Of course. But for such a worthless ordinary disciple to dare to challenge Yu Hao, he should be humiliated. Fellow disciple Yu Hao should show him how big the difference is between you and him. When Li Lin heard Yu Hao's words, he got frightened that he would have to fight. He didn't know if Yu Hao wanted him to fight, so he did his best to lure Yu Hao into fighting alone. He really did not want to engage in a battle with Lin Feng. That guy is such a disgrace for our mighty sect. He's making all of the members of the Yun Hai Sect lose face, said members of the crowd while looking at Li Lin. He was so shameless. But that guy actually had to defend his point of view. You are so pathetic. Lin Feng was sneering at Li Lin. Li Lin, when I was looking for skills in the Xing Chen Pavilion, you attacked Chen Chen and then you ended up being scared to death by him, causing everybody to laugh at you. Coincidentally, there was another ordinary disciple there, so you decided to pick a fight with me. You also threatened me that you would kill me. You insulted me several times and called me a piece of trash. Now, I challenge you and you seem to be terrified. How come? Yu Hao, you who have a mighty sword spirit, what a genius. You attacked me without any reason on that day. You said that you could kill me anytime, but it seems like you were just bullying me and trying to humiliate those weaker than yourself. Now, I am standing in front of you willing to fight, but where is your sword? Lin Feng said in a very cold tone. Everybody in the crowd understood what had happened. These two elite disciples were very pretentious. They had both provoked and bullied that ordinary disciple, but now that he had become stronger, he wanted to get his revenge. Yu Hao's face grew vicious and he said to Li Lin, "I will give you 3 seconds, if you don't attack him within that time, I will cripple your cultivation." Li Lin was furious. He was gnashing his teeth in hatred for Yu Hao. On that day, Yu Hao had bullied Lin Feng and treated him as if he was an insignificant existence. At that moment, Lin Feng's behavior towards him was strangely similar. "Alright, I will start and then you finish him," Li Lin said against his will. He was really forcing himself to fight. He then started moving towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng shook his head. His style looked incredibly laughable. Lin Feng really wondered how that guy had managed to become an elite disciple. "Get lost," Lin Feng then thrust his palm into the air and used his 8 strikes of desolation. 4 strikes immediately broke through the air and crashed onto Li Lin's body. Boom! 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 Li Lin was one of the weakest elite disciples. His strength was so low that he could not match some ordinary disciples. Lin Feng had hit him with a single skill while not even using his full strength, and that had made him fly through the air and heavily crash outside the life and death arena main stage. Lin Feng ignored Li Lin after that and said to Yu Hao, "So what are you waiting for? I thought you were going to kill me." 4 strikes. That's all. That's only half of 8 strikes, how laughable. Yu Hao knew what attack Lin Feng had used. In the Yun Hai Sect many people had learnt and practiced it to a similar level. Most elite disciples who had practiced it had managed to do 4 strikes and some talented individual had done 5. But there were very few people who managed to do more than 4 strikes within the elite disciple. It was extremely rare to see someone talented enough to break through 4 strikes. Lin Feng had only used 4 of the 8 possible strikes, but he could freely control how many strikes he used. He did not want to use his full strength when dealing with Li Lin. "Even though I said I would kill you, today is the elite disciple exam. Even though we are in the life and death arena, we are not allowed to directly kill. So today I will just cripple your cultivation and break both of your arms. You will be half dead when we finish this battle." Yu Hao was already very cruel to begin with, and now he had hatred towards Lin Feng. While talking, Yu Hao was unsheathed the sword that he was carrying on his back. His sword was already glowing and its light was radiant. The glowing light looked like the water of a river as sunlight shone down upon it. It was a truly dazzling light. An intangible chi started spreading through the air. That wouldn't be enough though. Yu Hao released his sword spirit. It was an extremely sharp sword shadow which appeared behind him. It was pointing towards the heavens as if it was about to cut down the heavens themselves. Even though those who possess a sword spirit are not weak, Lin Feng is also dangerous. The disciples in the crowd who were close to the arena could sense the strength and power contained within the sword chi. They had the sensation that they were being pressured by the power of Yu Hao, which made them feel dizzy and uncomfortable. However, Lin Feng, who was standing much closer, had no reaction. "I know that you like to rely on your sword spirit, so I will show you what it really means to be a sword master," Lin Feng said with a voice filled with killing intent. He then unsheathed the sword he was carrying on his back, and a powerful chi spread through the atmosphere, moving towards Yu Hao's sword. The pressure within the atmosphere suddenly increased greatly. "What, he's also a sword user? Does he have a sword spirit?" Everybody was shaking when they sensed the chi contained within Lin Feng's sword. Yu Hao was also stupefied. Everyone was shocked because Lin Feng had unleashed this pressure without releasing a sword spirit. Lin Feng had a faintly discernible smile on the corner of his mouth. Why would he use sword skills if he doesn't have a sword spirit? Yu Hao made a step forwards. Suddenly, a whistling noise spread throughout the atmosphere. The devastating sword chi was growing more and more powerful. The sword spirit behind his back was also glowing brighter and brighter. Yu Hao's sword chi was getting stronger and cutting through the atmosphere, moving straight towards Lin Feng. Do you necessarily need to have a sword spirit to use sword skills? Can the cultivators who possess a sword spirit only use sword skills? Asked Lin Feng, looking extremely calm. He stepped forward and said, even with your sword spirit you don't understand the basic principles of wielding a sword. Boom! Suddenly, an extremely strong qi shot towards Yu Hao. Even his own qi was retreating from the qi which had been unleashed. Lin Feng had started to gather sword force into the tip of his sword. The power which was released was incredible. Force, he is using sword force. People in the crowd seldom saw cultivators who had knowledge of forces, and when they saw some, they were usually battles between elite disciples and core disciples. Everyone had started to sense the immense power that was contained within his sword. The crowd was growing more shocked. So that's sword force. How powerful! There was an infinite amount of qi which was also released from the sword. This had allowed Lin Feng to utterly suppress Yu Hao. Oh my! He's only an ordinary disciple who just broke through to the Ling Qi layer, and he already controls his sword force to perfection. What a genius! Some people knew that forces were extremely hard to understand and control, especially at Lin Feng's level. Even some cultivators who had reached the peak of the Ling Qi layer were not necessarily able to control forces to the extent of Lin Feng, but Lin Feng seemed to master the forces to perfection. Of course, some of the ordinary disciples didn't even know what a force was and were asking other disciples how Lin Feng had such a powerful and oppressive sword. He's the one who beat the drums at the precipice of Zhanggu. He's so young and already extremely powerful. I could only dream to be that strong at his age. He definitely deserves a high status within the sect. He truly deserved the title of a true genius. We should take good care of him and honor him. He will become the future of the sect. Nan Gongling understood what Protector Bei had been talking about previously and now understood why Lin Feng was so important. He was a pillar of the sect. A solution had to be found so that Mo Xia wouldn't attempt to kill him again. That young man was a genius. Nan Gongling felt happy, but Mo Xia was not happy in the slightest. He had an evil look covering his face. Nan Gongling felt happy, but Mo Xia was not happy in the slightest. He had an evil look covering his face. That young man is too outstanding. He should have been killed at birth. Mo Xia thought evilly. Lin Feng had humiliated him, so even if he was a genius, he had to be killed, and Mo Xia couldn't afford to wait until Lin Feng grew up, as he would become too strong. In the middle of the crowd, Han Man felt at ease. He had a smile on the corner of his lips. He really has become so strong already. He even managed to convince me that I might be stronger. When he saw that Lin Feng was stronger than him, he was really happy for his sworn brother. Jing Yun, who was standing next to him, also had a brilliant smile on her face. She looked like a lotus flower in blossom. Her smile looked so pure and innocent, it could charm any man who saw. Jun, who was standing next to them, had a sparkle in his eyes while looking at Lin Feng on the fighting stage. He thought, no wonder he was able to react so quickly against me and with such a terrifying strength. He was this powerful. Inside the life and death arena, Yu Hao's face was turning deathly pale. His face had become so pale and cold that he already looked like a corpse. Even with your sword spirit you don't understand the basic principles of wielding a sword. Lin Feng had destroyed his honor and dignity. He had no choice but to agree with his statement, and he was not the only one. Everybody in the crowd had agreed. Yu Hao didn't understand basic sword principles. Compared with Lin Feng, he looked like a child holding a toy sword. Who was it that said, only those who had a sword spirit could become amazing sword masters? Every single trace of sword qi emerging from Yu Hao's body was vanishing as fast as it had appeared. It was crumbling and disintegrating each time he tried to release it. Controlling forces like he did, Lin Feng wasn't consuming much energy and the sword force was growing extremely powerful. I give up. You can become an elite disciple. Yu Hao had been struggling with his pride but had finally said those words. He just had the feeling that he had been truly humiliated and that the entire crowd was laughing at him for thinking he was so powerful. Give up. Lin Feng was smiling coldly. Could he really be let off so easily? When Yu Hao thought his victory was certain and he would easily overpower Lin Feng, he had wanted to cripple Lin Feng's cultivation. He wanted to break his arms and leave him half dead. It was impossible for him to be crueler than that. At the moment when Yu Hao found out that he couldn't compete with Lin Feng, he thought that one sentence was going to be enough to purify the hatred between them. Was that how things really worked? Well, Lin Feng didn't agree. Do I need to accept? Said Lin Feng, making fun of his actions. Lin Feng continued moving forwards and the sword force became even more powerful. It was oppressing Yu Hao's body so much that he could no longer breathe. I said I give up. What do you want me to do? Yu Hao's face changed. Lin Feng didn't stop moving closer. How terrifying. What do I want? That is very simple. I want you to do to yourself what you had said you would do to me, said Lin Feng with an ice-cold smile on his face. Yu Hao was shaking from head to toe. Lin Feng wanted him to cripple his own cultivation and break his own arms. This was a death sentence. He wanted him to commit suicide. This is the elite disciple exam of the Yun Hai Sect. How dare you, shouted Yu Hao. You may not dare to kill me, but shall we see if I dare to kill you? Lin Feng was moving closer while replying to Yu Hao. His sword slightly shook. A terrifyingly strong sword chi invaded the entire atmosphere and shot towards Yu Hao while piercing through the air. A deadly sword which existed solely to take the life of others. In the blink of an eye, Yu Hao's blood sprayed everywhere. His body collapsed lifelessly on the stage. His eyes were still wide open as if he was shocked at his own death. It looked like he couldn't believe that Lin Feng had actually dared to kill him. Phew, it seemed like the atmosphere had become tense. The entire crowd was holding their breath in shock. The arena had become so quiet that they could almost hear each other's heartbeat. Lin Feng had set a new record in the entire history of the Yun Hai Sect. He had challenged and defeated 2 elite disciples at the same time. He had then ruthlessly killed one of them in front of the entire sect. Lin Feng had violated the rules of the Yun Hai Sect in the presence of every disciple, every elder and even the Patriarch of the sect Nan Gongling. He had killed his opponent during the elite disciple exam. Audacious. An extremely loud shout spread throughout the area. It sounded like it was coming from above. The entire crowd was surprised and had the feeling they had been awoken from a dream as they could barely come to grips with what had just happened. In the presence of every member of the Yun Hai Sect. You really have no respect for the rules and no respect for the Patriarch either. You are guilty of crimes for which even death cannot atone. There was a loud shout. It sounded like that person really wanted to kill Lin Feng on the spot. The disciples in the crowd raised their heads and saw Mo Xie. Some people didn't understand what was going on, but when they saw Mo Xie, it had become clear. Mo Xie and Lin Feng were enemies and Mo Xie wanted to take advantage of the fact that Lin Feng was still weak. He could not let that young disciple become someone important and grow stronger than himself. If he did, then he would surely be killed. Therefore, he directly accused him of various crimes and then said that he had to die for his grave crimes. Lin Feng raised his head and saw Mo Xie. He just glanced at him for a second and then ignored him. He had joined the elite disciple exam, stepped on the highest fighting stage and had amazed the entire crowd. He had challenged 2 elite disciples at the same time. He had used sword force and had killed Yu Hao on the spot. He had done all of this for Mo Xie. Lin Feng had willingly given Mo Xie an opportunity to find excuses to kill him. He had hoped that Mo Xie would use these excuses to confront him. It was clear to Lin Feng that if he didn't do it himself, Mo Xie would continue to plot against him. Lin Feng had just delivered himself to Mo Xie with a neat ribbon. This was all part of his plan. When Mo Xie saw that Lin Feng was ignoring him, he became so furious that he was shaking from head to toe in anger. However, in his heart he was smiling coldly. He shouted, "Everybody, arrest this traitor, and if he tries to resist, kill him on the spot." When the crowd heard Emosia's words, they were disappointed. He was really beyond shameless. That elder's behavior was really impudent and cruel. It was clear that he was using his power in the sect to settle personal grudges. Bastard, cursed Han man. Everybody had heard him. Yu Hao wanted to cripple Lin Feng's cultivation, then break his arms and leave Lin Feng half dead. Was anything that Lin Feng had done unjustified? Jing Yun's face also turned livid. She was so scared for Lin Feng's safety. PFFF, that elder is really shameless, what a disgrace, cursed Liu Fei. Moxia had already used this trick once, yet was he going to give it another try? A few silhouettes flashed through the air towards the fighting stage, ready to catch Lin Feng. "Wait! Wait!" shouted a voice, which made the silhouettes, who were heading towards Lin Feng, immediately stop. The one who had stopped them was Nan Gongling. Everybody turned around and looked at Nan Gongling. They were all curious to see how Nan Gongling was going to handle the situation. Was he going to punish Lin Feng? Patriarch, that young disciple is presumptuous and arrogant. You don't exist in his eyes. You must punish him. It will be a warning for others as well. Mo Xia had come next to Nan Gongling and was slightly bowing, showing him respect with the intention to persuade him. He also quickly glanced at the people standing next to Nan Gongling. Elder Mo Xia is right. That ordinary disciple is too aggressive. He does not give the sect any respect. He will ruthlessly kill all his fellow disciples. We must kill him. Patriarch, his punishment should be death, we should kill him. A few elders were supporting Mo Xia. Mo Tsanglan had served the sect for a longer period than Nan Gongling. In the Yun Hai Sect, all these elders wanted to give him face, so they would obviously jump at the chance to support his son, Mo Xia. Nan Gongling raised his head. He looked at Mo Xia and all the elders who were getting involved. He then said indifferently, "Have you finished talking yet?" All the elders were stupefied. They didn't know what Nan Gongling meant by those words. Mo Xia, are you the patriarch of this sect? Or is it me, Nan Gongling, who is the current patriarch of this sect? He said that while paying no heed to anyone else but Mo Xia. Mo Xia was speechless. He then hastily replied, "You, of course. You are the patriarch." "I wouldn't dare," he was then interrupted again. "What about all of you, am I the patriarch of this sect or is Mo Xia the patriarch?" asked Nan Gongling to the elders who were supporting Mo Xia. "You, of course," replied the elders, feeling a slight chill run down their spines. Nan Gongling was a moderate person and never lost his temper. He had never talked to them in that way, but it was clear at this moment that he was angry. "Oh," said Nan Gongling while nodding, "then I would like to ask you, who is in charge of the elite disciple exam?" "The patriarch, of course," replied Mo Xia and the others elders in unison. Their backs were soaked with a cold sweat. They had really picked the wrong time to support Mo Xia. "So you all know." "Since you all know, then I would like to ask you, Mo Xia, you say that in this young disciple's eyes the sect is of no importance, then what about you? In my presence, in the presence of every member of the sect, you are shouting loudly and trying to act like the patriarch, and you even want to handle things of which I am responsible. How imposing. Elder Mo Xia, you tell me, do you even attach any importance to me or the sect?" Nan Gongling's voice dropped in volume. It seemed like there was a cold breeze blowing in the air over the crowd. Mo Xia and the other elders felt that they were in a very bad position. The elders who had been supporting Mo Xia a moment before didn't say anything, which was their only option at this point. Mo Xia thought that because his father was Mo Tsanglan that he could usurp all powers of the sect for himself. Mo Xia's behavior and words had finally made Nan Gongling furious. Crack! A loud noise pierced the silent atmosphere of the arena. The chair on which Nan Gongling sat had shattered under the pressure. "Speak! I want to ask all of you elders, Do you still see me, Nan Gongling, as the Patriarch of the Yun Hai Sect, and am I of any importance in your eyes? Nan Gongling stood up and shouted coldly at the elders. He had gone completely insane with anger. The elders felt their hearts drop and fear spread throughout their bodies. What role did they play in the sect anyway? Could they compare with the Patriarch? Everybody was looking at Nan Gongling, who was furious. His eyes looked like he was calm, which made it even more terrifying. His temperament was actually very good and he was never usually angry. What could have caused him to act in such a way? He had suddenly lost temper, and on top of that it was because of Mo Xie. Mo Xie had never been as shocked and scared as he had been when he saw Nan Gongling growing furious. He had to think carefully about what his next words would be. He bowed respectfully, then said, "Patriarch, Mo Xie admits his mistake." Mo Xie had never been as shocked and scared as he had been when he saw Nan Gongling growing furious. He had to think carefully about what his next words would be. He bowed respectfully, then said, "Patriarch, Mo Xie admits his mistake." Mo Xie and Mo Tsanglan had power in the Yun Hai Sect, but Nan Gongling was the Patriarch. Nan Gongling had become furious at Mo Xie's actions. Mo Xie had no choice but to admit his mistake. "Maybe I am too aggressive and too arrogant. Maybe I've been disrespectful to the Patriarch," said Mo Xie while insulting himself and acting humble. When Nan Gongling saw that Mo Xie acknowledged his mistakes, he started to calm down. He coldly glanced at Mo Xie and said, "Since you acknowledge your mistake, let's forget about it this time. If this happens again, then there will be no more chances." Regarding the disciple on stage, Yu Hao was the first to provoke him and state his intent. He threatened that he would cripple the cultivation of this young disciple, then planned to break his arms. He showed no intention of having any mercy and only gave the impression of cruelty. This was then returned on to him. But Patriarch Mo Xie wanted to speak again. He hadn't understood the reason why Nan Gongling was furious after all. Huh? Nan Gongling glanced at him furiously. Mo Xie swallowed his previous thoughts and forced himself to say, "Patriarch, you are wise and brilliant." Nan Gongling groaned. He didn't really care about what Mo Xie had to say. He then looked at Lin Feng and said, "What's your name?" Lin Feng raised his head and looked at Nan Gongling. He looked incredibly calm at this moment. Lin Feng. "Lin Feng, good job, you are now an elite disciple of the Yun Hai Sect," declared Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling was really impressed by Lin Feng's abilities and actions. He personally asked Lin Feng his name and personally gave him the status of an elite disciple. Many others would never have that privilege. The other disciples would need to check the results with the elder in charge of the elite disciple exam. Lin Feng was smiling from ear to ear. His smile seemed to be filled with a strange feeling which wasn't gratitude. His smile contained the feeling of accomplishment. Only those who are strong enough can demand respect. Nan Gongling hadn't forgotten that Lin Feng had once said words in that respect. At that moment, Lin Feng had showed that he held an extremely strong power and everyone had witnessed it. The question was as to how Nan Gongling was going to answer Lin Feng's actions. He had given Lin Feng the answer he had wanted. Mo Xie had tried to hand Lin Feng over to Lin Qian and Chu Zhanpeng. He hadn't gotten involved in the incident at that time. He had thought that an ordinary disciple wasn't worth creating a dispute with an elder. So he had just watched from the sidelines. But this time was different. Mo Xie had wanted to kill Lin Feng again and Nan Gongling had stopped him. It was only because Lin Feng had shown that he was truly a genius and proved it by returning with such an incredible increase in power. Nan Gongling now knew about the precipice of Zhanggu, so he was always going to value Lin Feng. Protector Bei had told him about it when he had wanted to kill Mo Xie. Mo Xie had been humiliated, but Nan Gongling had actually helped him in a way. Did Mo Xie really want to continue making this talented young disciple his enemy? But was that enough for Lin Feng? Obviously it wasn't. Lin Feng was not satisfied at all. Would he really let someone who had made so many attempts on his life get away with only a slap in the face? When the ferocious beasts had attacked the sect, Mo Xie simply handed Lin Feng over to them without hesitation. Lin Feng didn't believe that Nan Gongling was not aware of these actions. Nan Gongling may have been able to overlook these incidents, but could the same be said about Lin Feng? Just a moment ago, while in the presence of everyone, Mo Xie had wanted to kill Lin Feng again, and Nan Gongling had seen it with his own eyes. Had Nan Gongling punished Mo Xie? Everyone had the impression that he had, but in Lin Feng's eyes, he had just humiliated Mo Xie. Was Nan Gongling just trying to make Lin Feng feel grateful for this minor kindness and make him serve the sect? Lin Feng had never been a servile person. This was his second life, and he had almost died at the hands of Mo Xie too many times. Were Nan Gongling's words enough? They were too far from being enough. An elder was an elder, and an ordinary disciple was just an ordinary disciple, but because Lin Feng had proved to everyone that he was a genius, he was now an elite disciple. There is only one solution to this problem. If Mo Xie remains in this sect, then I will make my own path. However, if he is no longer within the sect, then I will stay. Thought Lin Feng. He knew that Nan Gongling and the Yun Hai Sect had to choose one person. If they chose him, then he would dedicate his life to the Yun Hai Sect. If they chose Mo Xie, then not only would he leave the sect, but he would return one day to take his revenge. Because of the hatred that he held for Mo Xie, there was no longer a peaceful solution. If the Yun Hai Sect was unable to choose him over Mo Xie, then he had no other choice but leave the sect. Lin Feng didn't say what he was thinking. He had hoped that Nan Gongling would choose him when the time came. This was only the beginning of the grudge between them. During the elite disciple exam, Lin Feng had already planned how to take care of Mo Xie. Lin Feng stepped down from the fighting stage and looked determined. Each of his steps were filled with firm determination. Nan Gongling was observing Lin Feng's eyes and thought that he looked very mysterious. It was not surprising that this young disciple would have some secrets, as many exceptional talents did. How strong and mysterious. If I was that strong, I would act the same way that he does. Even if there were 10 disciples who would join me to fight against him, we wouldn't be able to win. Lin Feng. I'll remember that name. Why would you remember his name? He wouldn't even recognize you. He's on a completely different level to us. We are just ordinary disciples. Even the highest ranked Qin Chen is nothing in comparison with him. None of the ordinary disciples are as strong as him. Lin Feng and Qin Chen are worlds apart. Two disciples were talking loudly amongst themselves, but didn't know that not far away was someone who looked furious. That person was precisely Qin Chen, who was the top-ranked ordinary disciple. He was the one who had provoked Lin Feng in the Xingqian pavilion and who had been humiliated by Lin Feng. I'm the best amongst all the ordinary disciples. Qin Chen was thinking about the words he had said to Lin Feng in the Xingqian pavilion. Qin Chen had nowhere to hide from the shame he felt from saying those words to Lin Feng. Even though these two disciples were harsh with their words, it was the truth. Qin Chen was nothing in comparison with Lin Feng. Yu Hao was an elite disciple with a sword spirit, and he had been killed in a single strike. Maybe he has forgotten about me completely, thought Qin Chen, feeling hopeless while trying to understand his situation. He was terrified that Lin Feng would seek him out and kill him. Lin Feng didn't attach any importance to Qin Chen and had actually forgotten about him. An ordinary disciple who kept repeating that he was the best amongst all the ordinary disciples probably had limited mental abilities. You're so much stronger than me that it's actually incredible, said Han Man, who saw Lin Feng. Why was Han Man always so enthusiastic? Lin Feng, you are really incredible, said Jing Yun, impressed. She was wondering how Lin Feng practiced and hoped she would get the chance to join him. The disciples surrounding them envied that little group of friends. Han Man and the others were all ordinary disciples, but they were very close friends with Lin Feng. They were probably going to mutually benefit from Lin Feng's rise in status. Han Man and the others also felt happy to have such a friend. They were thinking that it was too bad that they hadn't met him sooner. Lin Feng shrugged and asked Han Man while smiling, "When are you getting onto the fighting stage?" "Hee, good thing that there is nobody on the fighting stage because of your display." "It seems like now it's my turn," said Han Man while smiling. He then moved towards the life and death arena. Because Lin Feng had just created a huge uproar when he unleashed his power, Han Man felt less pressure to go onto the stage. Everybody was waiting to see what Han Man would do once he got onto the stage. The thing which shocked the crowd even more was that Han Man, like Lin Feng, had no clue how to be subtle. He surprisingly stepped onto the highest fighting stage. Everyone, including Lin Feng, was shocked. What a brave guy. I did not really think about these things beforehand. Does anyone of the first Ling Qi layer want to come and fight me? Han Man was standing on the fighting stage as he asked the crowd. His manner of speaking sounded so rude that everybody was speechless. He was either completely clueless or he was indeed another genius. Lin Feng had challenged two elite disciples at the same time, but he knew what he was doing and he had chosen his own opponents. Han Man was the complete opposite of Lin Feng. He didn't know any elite disciples' names and was challenging anyone who wished to fight against him. This was the first time that such a thing had happened in the whole of the sect's 1,000-year history. Lin Feng was speechless as he stared shocked at Han Man. His jaw had hit the floor and he was stupefied by Han Man's actions. Jing Yun couldn't help but giggle. That big goofball was hopeless. The entire arena was completely silent for a while until an elite disciple stepped onto the fighting stage and said, "All right, I'll fight against you." "Thank you, my name is Han Man. I'm Wang Han. I like people who are quick to accept a challenge." "Let's fight," said Han Man while laughing loudly. An extremely strong qi emerged from the earth beneath his feet. In the blink of an eye, Han Man's body had transformed and looked like it was made completely from compact earth. In the life and death arena at this moment, he was one with Mother Earth and Mother Earth was one with him. He had completely fused with the earth and become a symbiotic force. Boom! Han Man took a step forward and the entire arena began to shake under his feet. It sounded like a 1,000-foot giant was walking and each of his steps made the ground tremble. The disciples who were watching from the crowd felt their hearts begin to race, some with excitement and others with fear. An incredible force suddenly crashed onto Wang Han's body and it felt like he was being crushed. "He has mastered his use of force too," thought Nan Gongling, whose eyes were sparkling with delight. There were no words to describe his shock and joy. It wasn't surprising that Lin Feng could use forces, but that unknown ordinary disciple could use forces as well. Even though he had to rely on his spirit and clearly didn't understand forces to the same extent as Lin Feng, he could use and control them with an extraordinary strength. He could be regarded as another genius within the sect. It's incredible. It's fantastic. The Yun Hai Sect hasn't seen such strong young disciples for many years and now two shocking geniuses have appeared at the same time. Nan Gongling felt an incredible surge of joy in his heart. This was without a doubt his best elite disciple exam. The sect would actually rise to new heights within his generation. In the Shuiyu country there were a great number of sects and clans fighting for supremacy. Achieving power was not an easy thing to do as the competition was fierce. In the Shuiyu country there were a great number of sects and clans fighting for supremacy. Achieving power was not an easy thing to do as the competition was fierce. The Imperial clan was the strongest clan that existed in the whole Shuiyu country. They were so powerful that nobody dared to challenge their authority. There was no room to question the authority of the Imperial clan. Apart from the Imperial clan there are also some other extremely powerful clans in the Imperial city. There were the Yu clan of the Imperial city, the Yu clan and the Wan Shou Men clan. Outside of the Imperial city there were also the extremely strong sects which held a great deal of power. The Yun Hai Sect and the Haoyu Sect were both strong sects which were outside of the Imperial city's borders. There was also the Liu Fei sect as well as the Ice and Snow Mountain Village. There are 8 high officials of the Shuiyu country who represent the strongest and the most gifted young cultivators within the country. Everyone who is within those 8 officials is incredibly strong and has advanced to a high level of cultivation. The future of the country was held by these 8 young cultivators. The Yun Hai Sect was a great power, but it did not have anyone who qualified for a position as one of the 8 high officials. Even though a high official was extremely powerful and had an incredibly high status, it wasn't enough to affect the foundation of a sect. However, in 10 or 20 years that may not be the case. The foundation may be strong, but over time it can be shaken. Nan Gongling clearly understood how things worked with the politics of the country. Even if there was no sign of a sect declining in power, what about its future prospects? What if there were no suitable successors to take the place of Patriarch? What if the general power of the sect members declined? If these events happened over an extended period of time, then the end of the sect was inevitable. The effects would not show in the short term, however in the long term it was clear that the sect would fade from existence. This was the case of the Yun Hai sect at the moment. The general level of strength that the young disciples of the Yun Hai sect possessed was clearly in decline. Over the years they were attracting less and less talented individuals. How could Nan Gongling not be worried in such circumstances? This was something which troubled him for every second of every day. The fact that Lin Feng and Han Man stood before him and unleashed such spectacular talent, he has once again regained hope. He could feel that the fate of the Yun Hai sect was changing and it could possibly have a prosperous future. Lin Feng had incredible fighting power and his talent was truly unfathomable. He was a genius. With more time and dedication to practice, he could become one of the 8 high officials. This would create a bright new future for the Yun Hai sect. With him they would rise in power once again. The Yun Hai sect was going through a period of prosperity during these peaceful times, however if a conflict came about then they would be in a very dangerous position. The sect was currently in decline and its strength paled to that of the past generations. I hope that they can both climb to the top of the hierarchy within the Yun Hai sect, thought Nan Gongling while looking at Han Man on the fighting stage. In the imperial city, the construction of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu had already started and he now had these talent to nurture. Wasn't this a good omen? Boom! Han Man took another step. In the life and death arena there were waves of yellow sand which were surrounding and covering Wang Han. He was struggling to breathe under such immense pressure. The qi which was being released was so powerful that Wang Han felt like he was being buried alive where he stood. You win. Congratulations on joining the elite disciples, said Wang Han. Wang Han suddenly was able to breathe again. His body felt light and the pressure which was burying him had completely vanished. His eyes were half closed and voice was filled with disappointment in his lack of strength. He had been defeated. He had been humiliated, but he had also gained valuable insight thanks to the battle with Han Man. Brother, don't be so disappointed. I just exploited the fact that my spirit is very powerful, said Han Man while the qi around his body was slowly disappearing. Han Man looked and sounded honest. It was very hard to find a grudge against such a simple person. He could instantly become friendly with anyone. Thank you, said Wang Han while nodding at Han Man. He turned around and left the fighting stage. The final result was his defeat. That was a humiliation for any elite disciple and he did not want to stay in the spotlight any longer. Han Man quickly rushed back to Lin Feng and while looking incredibly happy with himself he said, "How was it? I earned everyone's respect, right?" "Not bad," said Lin Feng while smiling and nodding. Han Man had a good grasp of forces which he could control with the help of his spirit. Against somebody of the same level, Han Man clearly had a huge advantage in power and understanding. It would be very hard to find a cultivator on his level which could fight equally with him. Only those who possessed incredible talent would have a chance to defeat him. Lin Feng and the others stayed at the Stormy Gorge and continued to watch the other battles. There was always the chance for a cultivator to gain insight from watching a battle. There is not always such a great opportunity to watch so many battles at once. I would like to challenge Tu Fu today. He is extremely strong. I hope that with my power I will be able to defeat him and join the ranks of core disciples. Han Man had eyes filled with awe at the end of the first round, and he wasn't the only one. Many disciples were amazed at the battles they had the opportunity to watch. Tu Fu's battle was too amazing. Tu Fu was much too powerful. He had only used one punch which made even the heavens shake, and the fight was already over. Lin Feng, do you have anyone that you would like to defeat within the core disciples? Asked Han Man. Me? Asked Lin Feng, surprised. He then shook his head while smiling and said, I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Lin Feng really hadn't thought that far ahead. A great majority of the ordinary disciples of the Yun Hai Sect were only at the Qi layer. If they wanted to become elite disciples, then they would at least need to have broken through to the Ling Qi layer. The first Ling Qi layer was the minimum requirement for elite disciples. The elite disciples who had broken through to the third Ling Qi layer were exceptionally strong individuals. Those who had broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer would have the qualifications to join the core disciples. However, the core disciples of the fourth Ling Qi layer were considered weak compared to the other core disciple. Those who joined the core disciples also had to go through the same process of defeating one of the current core disciples. However, who were the core disciples? They were the foundation of the sect, and defeating even the weakest of them was not an easy task. Every year, many disciples tried to advance during the elite disciple exam. There was only a single chance for a disciple every year. This exam was the only chance they had to move to a new disciple ranking. There were many elite disciples between the first and the fourth Ling Qi layer. Only the ones with incredible talent or battle power could join the core disciples. Lin Feng had 3 spirits thanks to all the suffering he had been put through. He was thinking about difference between elite disciples and core disciples. Even if he joined core disciples, so what? Mo Xia was still an elder and held a huge advantage over him. The first round of the elite disciple exam came to end, and there were many lively discussions happening within the crowd. It was hard for many of the disciples to hold their excitement for the second round, which would be in 3 days' time. All the elite disciples and the core disciples would use all of their power in the upcoming battles, as it would decide their rankings within the sect. Holding the highest ranking within the disciples was an honor for any disciple. Lin Feng didn't want to wait around any longer. He immediately headed towards the practice area for elite disciples. He was now an elite disciple. He needed to get his new disciple robes as well as a certificate of entry into the elite disciples. These were symbolic of the status a person held within the sect. Lin Feng. At that moment, Lin Feng heard a voice coming from behind which made him stop. He turned around and saw such a beauty running towards him. What's wrong? Asked Lin Feng to Liu Fei, who was walking towards him. He was a bit surprised to see her. Can I talk to you in private? Liu Fei looked embarrassed when she looked at Han Man and the others. Talk in private. Lin Feng was really puzzled. What could Liu Fei have to tell him that required to talk in private? Even though Lin Feng's opinion of Liu Fei had completely changed since she had tried to protect him against Mo Xia, his opinion had not changed to such an extent. Were they close enough that they could talk in private? Haha, of course there would be no problem. Lin Feng, we have an important matter to handle now. We will head off first and you can join us later. Lin Feng hadn't said anything yet, but Han Man had already replied for him. He also hastily pulled Pajun and Jing Yun away from the couple. Lin Feng was speechless. Since when had Han Man become so cunning? They had an important matter. What did he mean? Going to receive the elite disciple certificate and a new set of robes? Liu Fei was already standing next to Lin Feng and had become very embarrassed. She quickly said, let's move to somewhere private where we can talk. Lin Feng slightly nodded. He was really curious to know what Liu Fei could have to tell him. Lin Feng, do you remember the first time we met? I remember. You almost killed me for no reason on that day, said Lin Feng. That girl's strength was incredible and there was something hidden deep within her. However, she was really too rash and viscous. If you hadn't tried to peep on me and do perverted things, then would have I tried to kill you, said Liu Fei, who was suddenly in a bad mood. I never peeped on you or had any perverted intentions, replied Lin Feng, who was also growing angry at Liu Fei. On that day, when he had gone into the mountains, it had really been a coincidence. How could she categorically state that Lin Feng was a pervert? Liu Fei saw that Lin Feng wasn't going to admit it. That bastard was really evil. Lin Feng actually thought that Liu Fei was really beautiful, but he did not even know she was there. That was a fact. She really was one of the most beautiful girls in the sect though, so it was understandable that many people wanted to peep on her. Alright, I admit that I was wrong, I misunderstood you. I would like to apologize. Liu Fei was gnashing her teeth and had forced the words out from her mouth. If it was not for her father, she would never have come to Lin Feng. Lin Feng couldn't understand Liu Fei. He stared blankly at her while trying to understand what had just happened. What are you looking at? Asked Liu Fei. Lin Feng was still staring at her. She was embarrassed and she was blushing, which had caught Lin Feng by surprise. Could it be? Did you? Lin Feng was strangely looking at Liu Fei. He was gazing deeply into her beautiful eyes. Did you fall for me? Lin Feng had finally managed to say what had come into his mind. He could not stop all of the thoughts that were rushing through his head. Liu Fei was incredibly strange and tomboyish, but she was beautiful and had an interest in Lin Feng. Lin Feng had never had a girlfriend, so he couldn't help but feel very embarrassed at his current situation. Liu Fei was stunned. She had finally lost her temper and shouted, "You bastard!" Lin Feng simply shrugged and smiled. He couldn't be blamed for thinking that way because Liu Fei was acting so strangely. Lin Feng simply shrugged and smiled. He couldn't be blamed for thinking that way because Liu Fei was acting so strangely. Liu Fei was looking at Lin Feng and her heart was pounding in her chest. She couldn't help but gnash her teeth. She had never been so furious, but she had to control herself. There is something I would like to discuss with you, said Liu Fei. She then fell dead silent. Her face had turned red and she tried to open her mouth, but there were no words coming out. What do you want to talk about? Asked Lin Feng, surprised. Do you know who the strongest people are in the Shuiyu country? Asked Liu Fei. Of course I know, it's the Imperial clan. Lin Feng replied immediately. Lin Feng knew that the Imperial clan were the strongest and there was not a person who would dare contest that. This is why they so easily ruled over the country. Only the strongest person could become emperor and only with power could they control the country. This was a fact. Liu Fei was surprised. She didn't know that Lin Feng was so knowledgeable about the subject. He had responded so quickly without even taking time to think. That's right. In the Shuiyu country the Imperial clan is the strongest. Even though there are extremely strong clans and sects within the country like the Yun Hai Sect, there is not a single power that would dare to face against the Imperial clan. Liu Fei explained. However, now the Emperor has requested some of the outstanding disciples of the Shuiyu country to help develop the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. They will receive the best cultivation resources available and the best teachers will be available to them. They will develop into incredible powers for the country and they will become leaders in the future. At that moment, Liu Fei stopped talking and looked at Lin Feng's reaction. Lin Feng looked at Liu Fei while smiling and asked, "What does that have to do with me?" Liu Fei looked at Lin Feng with anger building up inside her. She was cursing at him under her breath. He was extremely smart and she didn't believe for even a second that he didn't understand what she wanted. So you're not interested in going there? Are you not interested in getting the best profound pills, the best weapons, the best martial skills and agility techniques? Said Liu Fei while trying to convince him. Lin Feng had understood what Liu Fei meant. She was being very obvious with her intentions. However, what he was trying to figure out was Liu Fei and exactly what was in it for her. What was her relation with the imperial clan and why would she need to come and recruit on their behalf? When he thought of the day when he had seen Liu Fei with the Qi Shui armored horses, he believed even more than Liu Fei held an extraordinary status within the imperial city. Liu Fei saw Ling Feng's eyes were sparkling with intrigue. She then smiled and said, "So, how does it sound? Are you excited?" Lin Feng scratched his head while looking at Liu Fei and said with a giggle, "Are there any girls as beautiful as you there?" When Lin Feng saw that Liu Fei was blushing, he laughed and started walking away. Even though the imperial clan is extremely strong, there are also other clans who are very ambitious. The imperial clan wants them to hand over their best disciples and go to the holy courtyard. Do you really believe that it will be so simple? After these words left Lin Feng's mouth, it caused Liu Fei to stare at him with a stunned expression. He really was much smarter than she had initially imagined. No wonder he had managed to advance his strength in such a short period of time. He was a real genius. But this bastard was making her lose face. Liu Fei was in a bad mood because of what Lin Feng had said. If she had the chance, then she would definitely defeat that bastard and make him regret everything. That would be her revenge for constantly getting ridiculed by him. She had started following him as he left. Nine Frost Mountain was the name of the place where the elite disciples lived. In the Nine Frost Mountain, there was a gigantic cave which was popular with the elite disciples because of a certain cliff. At the top of the precipice, engraved in the stone, were a list of names. Those names were the names of the strongest elite disciples. There were 80 names in total which were carved into the stone. What intrigued people the most is that it looked like a chessboard. Each of the 80 names was like a chess piece which could be moved across the board. Some names would be eliminated, while other insignificant pieces would cross the board and transform into powerful pieces. All of the elite disciples within the sect hoped that their name could be engraved on that board someday. It would mean that they had finally reached the top and would be respected by all. At that moment, Tu Fu's name, which was at the top of the list, was removed. They all understood what was happening. He was one of the first people to become a core disciple, and he had even defending his right to be a core disciple. Then, a new name replaced Tu Fu's name on the list of the elite disciples. Wen Yen. His name had appeared there suddenly like a comet which had crashed through to the top position. He had only needed a year and he was already at the top of the elite disciple rankings. Everybody knew of his strength. He had the power to join the core disciples, but he decided to stay as an elite disciple. Everybody knew the reason why he had done such a thing. He did not want to join the core disciples because he was too arrogant and refused to be lowly ranked amongst the core disciples. He would rather rule over the elite disciples than be kicked around by the core disciples. When Ren Yen was 16 years old. There were many young disciples in the Yun Hai Sect who were exceptionally talented. He had never been an ordinary disciple because he had directly joined as an elite disciple. Once he joined the elite disciples, he had been fighting intensively and his name had constantly been rising up in the rankings. A year had passed and his name was already carved into the top stone on the board. Many people trusted Wen Renyen and believed in his power. He had achieved a great deal of accomplishments in the year he spent fighting his way to the top. He could even be compared to people like Ling Hu Hishan or Fu Tuesday. Outside of the cave, a group of people had arrived. All of the disciples there were looking at this group with respect filling their eyes. Wen Renyen has arrived. Amongst the group was a young man wearing a white Chang Pao. He looked incredibly arrogant yet powerful. He had deep blue eyes and had a strangely cold-looking face. This young man was Wen Renyen. Wen Ren, congratulations, said a disciple standing next to him while smiling. The top ranking amongst the elite disciples, that's all I have achieved, replied Wen Renyen expressionless. He glanced at his name on the stone and said, Chen Xing, considering your current strength, you should also have your name carved onto that ranking list. Yes, I will do my best, said Chen Xing while nodding. Chen Xing was the elite disciple that had been defeated by Lin Qian in front of everybody when she came to the sect. Since then, Chen Xing had been practicing harder than he had ever practiced before. He wasn't far from breaking through to the second Ling Qi layer. He was also considered a young genius. He was quite respected amongst the elite disciples. Even Wen Renyan respected him and his determination. He. Wen Renyan smiled. Immediately after, he glanced at the crowd. His blues were sparkling with a strange light. From today, I declare that Liu Fei is officially mine. If anyone tries to flirt with her, then do not blame me for being ruthless. Everybody sighed when they heard what Wen Renyan had said. He had been interested in Liu Fei for a while, and now that he was the strongest within the elite disciples, he had wanted to prevent others from approaching Liu Fei. Wen Renyan was actually insane to say such a thing, because everybody knew that he had only refused to join the core disciples because he wanted to remain as the top elite disciple. However, there were many strong core disciples who were interested in Liu Fei. In Liu Fei's eyes, Wen Renyan didn't even exist. The entire crowd was speechless when suddenly a loud voice was heard within the crowd. How can you say that Liu Fei is yours when what you say is of such little importance? We want to hear Liu Fei say it herself. Han Man knew that Lin Feng and Liu Fei were together at that moment. He got angry when he heard what Wen Renyan had so boldly declared. Everybody was surprised. Who was that audacious guy who dares provoke Wen Renyan? Does he want to die? The crowd was whispering amongst themselves. Not only was Wen Renyan extremely strong, but he was also respected within the Yun Hai Sect. Even some of the core disciples didn't dare provoke him. Very good, said Wen Renyan while turning around. His blue eyes revealed his murderous intention. Immediately an image of a poisonous snake shot from his hand. Boom! Han Man's body was thrown against the wall of the cliff. Blood was spilling out of his mouth. His eyes had an insolent expression as if he wasn't going to obey. If you say another word, I'll kill you where you stand. Wen Renyan sounded calm and serene but also firm. Piss off. Han Man said while spitting out blood. He was staring coldly at Wen Renyan and said, don't think that you're strong because you needed 1 year to reach the top of the ranking. When my brother arrives, he will wipe your name from the list in no time. Who's your brother then? Tell me. Wen Renyan said as his words were filled with disdain. Lin Feng, Liu Fei's boyfriend. Han Man had said this on purpose. After what happened during the exam where Lin Feng had dared to kill an elite disciple in front of everyone including the elders, Han Man was convinced that no one would dare provoke Lin Feng so easily. He was also sure that Lin Feng would not need much time before he had surpassed Wen Renyan. Han Man was convinced that Lin Feng could defeat him in less than a year. Who's Lin Feng? Wen Renyan said that indifferently. He hadn't bothered to go to the exam on that day. He knew that nobody would dare to challenge him because he was one of the strongest elite disciples. Someone who has just broke through to the Ling Qi layer but has already mastered forces. He is nothing compared to you. Chen Xing said full of disdain. Oh, is that really what you think? Suddenly a voice echoed through the silence as 2 figures appeared in the distance. Suddenly, everybody gazed into the distance and tried to make out the figures of the people who were approaching. The beautiful Liu Fei was approaching. But who was that young man that she was following? What shocked everybody at that moment is that Liu Fei together with this young disciple and they had been alone together. This young man was actually Lin Feng. Many people had seen Lin Feng in the life and death arena as he killed an elite disciple in cold blood, and they made sure to remember his face. Many had made a mental note to not offend this young disciple in the future. The voice which had interrupted them was actually Lin Feng's voice. Could it be that it was true and Lin Feng is actually Liu Fei's boyfriend? Everybody was thinking about the words of Han Man and they were paying close attention to Wen Renyan. But Wen Renyan still had a calm look on his face as if he was not affected. His blues, however, were revealing his evil intentions. It was clear he would not let this matter rest. So, you are the new little elite disciple, Lin Feng, said Wen Renyen with a hint of disdain in his voice. He was talking down to Lin Feng and attempting to humiliate him. What surprised him is that it seemed like Lin Feng had completely ignored his presence. He just glanced at him for a second and continued over to Han Man, who was still in a bad condition. Are you alright? I just have a small injury. Don't worry about it, said Han Man while smiling, and now he was also ignoring Wen Renyen. Don't start so many fights. I do not want to see you die, said Lin Feng, glaring at Han Man. This simple-minded disciple was a troublemaker. He could not stop himself from causing trouble. A moment before, he had said that Liu Fei was Lin Feng's girlfriend. Liu Fei would be furious after hearing such a thing. That guy is insane. He's saying to everyone that Liu Fei belongs to him, said Han Man, sounding angry. Liu Fei was furious and quickly glanced at Wen Renyen. At that moment, Wen Renyen was frowning. He could not believe that a disciple who had just broken through to the Ling Qi layer could be as insane as to ignore him. Within the Yun Hai Sect nobody had ever dared to provoke him, not even the elders of the sect would ignore him when he spoke. Let me ask, have you been listening to what I have said? Said Wen Renyen. It suddenly seemed like the entire area was growing colder. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng. That guy was an incredible genius who was able to control sword force, but he was far from being able to challenge Wen Renyen. It looked like Wen Renyen was going to have to teach him how large the world truly is. Let him continue to talk with himself. He has a big mouth, so it is easy to ignore him when he speaks. It's unfortunate that you can only ignore him. It would be better if he would stop talking, said Lin Feng to the others while ignoring Wen Renyen. He continued talking to Han Man. When he says that Liu Fei is his, so what? That is none of my business. Han Man was staring at Lin Feng and was shocked, speechless. Han Man was doing this out of loyalty for Lin Feng. He knew that they were secretly a couple and he was still trying to hide it. I want to ask you something. When Renyen had said this sentence very slowly, emphasizing each word with a voice filled with anger. A strong qi was spreading through the air. In front of the whole crowd, Lin Feng was still ignoring him and causing him to lose face in front of such a large crowd. I heard you, said Lin Feng, turning around his head. He then looked at Wen Renyen and said, You're asking me if I'm Lin Feng, is that right? So you're not deaf, said Wen Renyen while smiling coldly. Since you ask me who I am, it means you don't know me, right? Wen Renyen was staring at Lin Feng confused. He was asking such an obvious question. Did Lin Feng have a defect in his brain? Such nonsense, said Wen Renyen. Nonsense? Maybe. Since we do not know each other, why should I waste my time speaking with you? Said Lin Feng as he looked at Wen Renyen and added, What are you going to do about it? When he finished talking, an immense qi emerged and filled the atmosphere. Madness. Everybody was stunned. Lin Feng was actually insane enough to fight with Wen Renyen. That guy was really crazy. He was courting death. Wen Renyen looked deathly pale. It was the first time that someone had dared to talk with him like that. Lin Feng, you are dreaming if you think you can fight against Wen Ren. You will die for sure. You shouldn't have provoked Wen Ren, said Chen Xing while staring at Lin Feng. Chen Xing, do you think you are a top-ranked disciple? You obviously think that you're a genius, but not so long ago you were defeated by Lin Qian when she had just broken through to the Ling Qi layer. Everybody watched how you lost so pitifully, and yet you call yourself a genius? You are far from a genius in my eyes. Lin Feng said with a calm face, as if he was talking normally, but it had made Chen Xing furious. He had been badly humiliated by a nobody disciple. That guy really has a big mouth, thought Liu Fei while looking at Lin Feng, who had made both Wen Renyen and Chen Xing furious with his words. She was wondering why Lin Feng acted in the ways that he did. You are insulting me and attempting to bully me because I only recently reached the Ling Qi layer. Well, let's solve this problem in the Stormy Gorge in the Life and Death Arena. Do you dare? Stormy Gorge, Life and Death Arena, did he dare? Lin Feng was challenging Chen Xing to a battle in the Life and Death Arena where the rules were more relaxed. In the arena they would forfeit the protection granted by the sect and could really lose their life. A strong qi was constantly emerging from Lin Feng's body and he sounded extremely confident. Chen Xing was stunned at such actions. Chen Xing was at the second Ling Qi layer and was so strong that he would soon have his name engraved onto the ranking list. But Lin Feng's words had stunned him. How could Lin Feng be so self-confident and arrogant? In the Life and Death Arena, did he dare? He was trying to relax but his heart was pounding. How can you be so confident in challenging me? Is it because of your sword force? Asked Chen Xing. Sword force is indeed extremely powerful. Yu Hao wasn't weak but he had been killed from a single strike. Even if Yu Hao had been stronger, the result would have still been the same. I cannot be sure that he used all of his strength during that fight. If he is much stronger than what he has already shown during the fight against Yu Hao, will I be able to fight against him? Chen Xing's thoughts were racing and he was considering every possible situation. He had a weird expression on his face, he was straining his face and he looked like an idiot. He had already lost against Lin Qian in front of a large crowd. He could not afford to lose face again. So ridiculous, and you used to be the top-ranked ordinary disciple. You think you're important because you became an elite disciple with such little strength? You haven't made any progress and you are still weak in cultivation and willpower. A strong cultivator is firm and persistent. A strong cultivator takes the path of cultivation seriously. On the path of cultivation, relying on other people's success will never allow you to reach the top. Lin Feng saw how ugly Chen Xing's face looked. The qi surrounding Lin Feng's body shot towards Chen Xing and started to apply pressure on his body. Lin Feng started walking slowly towards him. He was walking very slowly, one step after the other. Chen Xing was scared to death. He could barely breathe under the pressure of Lin Feng's qi and he could feel a deathly chill running down his spine. A strong cultivator is firm and persistent, is strong, and takes the path of cultivation seriously. These words were resonating in Chen Xing's head. He used to work harder than anyone else to cultivate and everybody used to think he was a genius because of that. Then when he started to associate with Wen Renyan, his speed had dropped and he was slacking. He felt inferior to Wen Renyan and had lost his motivation to grow stronger. Was he able to regain his former glory and self-confidence that he used to hold so dear? Chen Xing wasn't the only who felt affected by Lin Feng's words. Other disciples in the crowd who had heard his words were feeling bad about their own choices. He is speaking very wise words and his words are having a profound impact on everyone who hears him. Liu Fei was also affected by Lin Feng's words. He really was a genius in so many ways. He was so unconventional and unrestrained, he really had nothing servile in his personality. Chen Xing, come on. Are you not ashamed of yourself? Provoking others while being rude and then not daring to fight? If you refuse, then not only will you prove that you are not a genius but you will also prove that you are a coward. Lin Feng said while he continued walking towards Chen Xing. An incredible force was oppressing Chen Xing's body and soul. Coward. Coward, that word was resonating in Chen Xing's brain and it was like torture for him. His face was completely distorted in pain. Ah! Suddenly, Chen Xing shouted loudly. Some disciples had to cover their ears. Everybody was staring blankly at the scene that was occurring in astonishment. How powerful was Lin Feng? Lin Feng didn't even need to fight. Chen Xing had only said a few words and was already about to collapse because of the pressure that Lin Feng was applying. How could he fight when he could not even speak under the pressure? At that moment, the entire crowd was looking at Lin Feng and only saw that he had a cold smile on his face. He looked like a dangerous, ferocious beast. His eyes looked so dark that it gave the impression that he was no longer human. Lin Feng had abilities similar to that of the imaginary demon. He had a mystical power. He had used that power on Chen Xing, piece of trash, said Wen Renyan. His azure blue eyes were staring angrily at Lin Feng. Even though you're a little bit stronger than Chen Xing, you're still extremely weak in comparison with me. You are nothing but a bug which I can crush at any time. Now, kneel down and beg me for mercy or I will crush you here and now. Wen Renyan said in an ice-cold tone filled with killing intent. Lin Feng had said that it was useless to rely on somebody else's power. He was going to teach Lin Feng a lesson and make him kneel down before him. It seemed like Lin Feng hadn't heard Wen Renyan. He actually didn't care about what he was saying. Lin Feng was used to people who talked big but in the end did not have the strength to match their arrogance. It seemed like Lin Feng hadn't heard Wen Renyan. He actually didn't care about what he was saying. Lin Feng was used to people who talked big but in the end did not have the strength to match their arrogance. Han Man, is he the one who injured you? Asked Lin Feng to Han Man when Renyan was indeed the person who had attacked Han Man and caused him to be injured. Yes, said Han Man while nodding. He then whispered in Lin Feng's ears, when Renyan is not even close to the strength of Tu Fu. So now that Tu Fu has become a core disciple, he is currently ranked first within the elite disciples. He's strong and has a fierce temper. I'm not in a hurry to get my revenge on him. I believe that in a short time, you will definitely be able to defeat him. He was strong. An elite disciple who had broken through to the third Ling Qi layer could be ranked amongst the top disciples with no difficulty. Those who had broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer were strong enough to fight against the core disciples of the sect. If Wen Renyan had broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer, then he definitely wouldn't have stayed as an elite disciple and would have become a core disciple. So at that moment he was most likely at the peak of the third Ling Qi layer. He would not have had a breakthrough yet to the fourth Ling Qi layer. A cultivator of that level was indeed very powerful, but that did not mean that he was invincible and could provoke who he wished. Lin Feng was confident that if he had to fight with him then he would be able to win, and if he was not able to fight against him then he could retreat unharmed. No need to discuss any more. This is the only chance I will give you. Even if you're a genius, I can take your life at any time. Now kneel before me. When Renyan thought that he was the strongest and his arrogance was clear. He truly did not know how vast the world was. He thought that because Lin Feng had just become an elite disciple that he was weak and could be bullied. To Wen Renyan, who would even dare to fight against some core disciples, he was really nothing but a bug. Even though Lin Feng understood a lot about forces, he was too weak. There would be no problem to defeat Lin Feng with a single thought. Wen Renyan had an extremely strong spirit. It would in no way be weaker than the sword force of Lin Feng. Wen Renyan had an unbreakable faith in the strength of his spirit. There is no need to think it over, said Lin Feng while shaking his head, and then while giving a cold smile, he said, even though you want me to kneel down and beg you for mercy, I have no reason to obey you. Everybody was stupefied by Lin Feng's words. He was aggressive and would not retreat no matter who he faced. He truly had the demeanor of an emperor. Wen Renyan was the top-ranked elite disciple. He was respected by everyone and feared for his strength. What did he think of Lin Feng? He only just become an elite disciple and was no better than those bugs called ordinary disciples. Hee. Alright. Alright. Wen Renyan said with an evil smile which was filled with hatred. His azure blue eyes were emanating a strong killing intent which made other disciples tremble in fear. This is terrible. Wen Renyan has become furious. Some disciples in the crowd knew that this had become a very dangerous situation. They were very scared of Wen Renyan. Nobody dared provoke him because of his strength and also because of his temper. Lin Feng also sensed the cold air which was emanating from Wen Renyan's body. Lin Feng didn't sense it in the same way though. He felt that there was a diabolic and evil intention held within his eyes. Wen Renyan, what do you intend to do? You are not in the life and death arena, said Liu Fei while moving in front of Lin Feng to block the way. Wen Renyen said that Liu Fei was his and declared that no one else could attempt romance with her. In fact, they hadn't known each other for a long time, but Liu Fei had already come to an understanding of what kind of person he really was. He looked strong and confident on the outside, but he was like a venomous snake. He did not have the honor and morals which other had. Liu Fei still wanted Lin Feng to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Therefore she didn't want him to die from his current situation. In Liu Fei's opinion, Lin Feng wasn't weak but could never fight against Wen Renyen. If he fought against him, he would surely die. You are mine and yet you protect this young man, are you not afraid to make me angry? Wen Renyen looked hideously evil at that moment. It looked like his azure blue eyes alone could kill if you gazed into them for too long. They clearly revealed his murderous intentions. I've never said that I was your girlfriend or that I was your property. Stop dreaming. I would never be in a relationship with a guy like you. It's actually the opposite. Lin Feng is my boyfriend. If you touch him, I will never let you off. Liu Fei was staring at Wen Renyen looking extremely serious. Oh my, so that's how it is. Liu Fei admits that she is Lin Feng's girlfriend. What a lucky bastard. He captured the heart of the most beautiful girl within the Yun Hai Sect. Everybody was staring at Lin Feng and were filled with envy and jealousy. Han Man, who was still injured, was looking at Lin Feng with eyes revealing an immense amount of respect. He looked like he truly worshipped and adored Lin Feng. He knew that Lin Feng not only had a strong body but his heart was the strongest that he had ever seen. Core disciples had never been able to conquer Liu Fei's heart, and then suddenly Liu Fei admitted to being the girlfriend of his sworn brother. What great news! Lin Feng had no idea what was going on and had been confused by this whole situation. When had this all happened? When had they become a couple? Lin Feng then looked at the crowd who was surrounding them. They were looking at him with evil eyes. Damn it, that girl once again, she had caused him trouble. Well, I will just have to kill him, said Wen Renyen, who looked even more furious than before. Do you dare? Shouted Liu Fei furiously. In the Yun Hai Sect, there is nothing that I, Wen Renyen, don't dare. Wen Renyen then laughed an evil laugh as if he cared for nothing in the world. Is that so? We will see about that, said a firm and steady voice. A silhouette which had appeared in the distance suddenly shot towards the cave of the elite disciples. How presumptuous! Wen Renyen, do you think that you're the patriarch of the sect? Said a voice which was coldly laughing. The man who had just arrived was looking at Wen Renyen with a look filled with disdain and anger. You Shui, this none of your business and doesn't require you to get involved. Wen Renyen was also looking at the man with disdain in his eyes. Wen Renyen is really presumptuous and audacious. How dare he disrespect an elder? Some disciple who were watching the scene were shocked. Shuiyu was an elder of the ordinary disciples. There were not many within the elite disciples who dared to disrespect him. PFFF, Lin Feng and his friends came to receive their elite disciple certificate and their new disciple robes, and you suddenly threatened to kill him. What would other people think of our Yun Hai Sect? I am an elder, how could I not care? Indeed, this territory is under my control, so you have nothing to do here. An ice-cold voice was heard inside the cave, and then a middle-aged man wearing an indigo Chang Pao suddenly appeared from the shadows. Elder Liu, said Wen Renyen to the man wearing the indigo Chang Pao. He was also an elder. He was responsible for giving the elite disciple certificates as well as the elite disciple robes to the new disciples. He was also in charge of the rankings within the disciples. Lu Yuan nodded at Wen Renyen in a friendly way, but he wasn't as friendly to Shuiyu. Shuiyu, you should stay where you belong. What are you doing here causing trouble? What do you mean? Asked Shuiyu while staring at Lu Yuan. What do I mean? This is my territory. We don't need you to concern yourself with our affairs. You mean that within your territory, Wen Renyen can kill other disciples as he wishes, including other elite disciples? Even if he killed a few weak ones, who would even care? Here the weak do not deserve to live and only the strong can survive. Shuiyu, you're causing too much trouble by being here. Everybody was surprised. They wouldn't have thought that the issue between Lin Feng and Wen Renyan would lead to an argument between two elders of the sect. However, Elder Lu's words were harsh and cruel. According to Elder Lu, Lin Feng was inferior to Wen Renyan, so even if he got killed by him, it wouldn't be a problem at all. He was even saying that Lin Feng did not deserve to live. How laughable. Lin Feng also understood what Elder Lu meant. The though had made him smile, but his heart grew colder than ice. He had become an elite disciple and had to come pick up his certificate and his robes, but the one who was in charge of giving him these things ended up saying he wasn't strong enough and deserved to die for being inferior to Wen Renyan. What was that supposed to mean? Regarding Shuiyu, the first time Lin Feng had seen him was when Protector Bei had passed the responsibility of protecting the Xingqian Pavilion onto him. He was clearly one of Protector Bei's trusted friends. Elder Shui, said Lin Feng suddenly. Shuiyu turned around and looked at Lin Feng. Thank you, said Lin Feng while smiling. Lin Feng then looked at Wen Renyan and Lu Yuan and said, Elder Lu, Lin Feng came to pick up his certificate and new disciple robes. Lu Yuan glanced at Lin Feng with a look of disdain. He then looked at Wen Renyan. Not only was Wen Renyan very strong, but his background was also terrifying. Because he appreciated Wen Renyan, he also decided that he was Lin Feng's enemy. Elder Lu, Lin Feng came to pick up his certificate and new disciple robes. Lin Feng said it even louder than before, sounding extremely strict and firm. You really don't know who you are talking to, said Lu Yuan while glancing at Lin Feng and then shouted, Get lost. Audacious. Lu Yuan, you're really being unfair. Lin Feng is now an elite disciple of our Yun Hai Sect, you must give him his robes and his certificate. This is a rule within the sect. Would you be daring enough to break the sect rules so blatantly, said Shuiyu in an ice-cold tone. Audacious. Lu Yuan, you're really being unfair. Lin Feng is now an elite disciple of our Yun Hai Sect, you must give him his robes and his certificate. This is a rule within the sect. Would you be daring enough to break the sect rules so blatantly, said Shuiyu in an ice-cold tone. Elder Shui. Lin Feng said in a soft voice. Shuiyu turned around and looked at Lin Feng. Today, I have come to pick up my certificate and robes as an elite disciple, but Elder Lu doesn't want to let me. He insulted me and told me to get lost. Elder Shui had witnessed all these things as they happened, right? Asked Lin Feng. Indeed, said Shuiyu nodding. He didn't understand Lin Feng's point. Since I now have a witness that I am being treated unfairly, I have had enough, said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. If they refuse me entry into the elite disciples, it means that the sect has chosen to abandon me. When he finished talking, Lin Feng quickly turned around and went towards Han Man. The whole crowd was stupefied and didn't understand what Lin Feng meant. PFFF, don't think that you can run away because Shuiyu is here to defend you. Next time that I see you, I will kill you. When Renyan knew that he couldn't kill Lin Feng in front of Shuiyu, but next time they'd meet alone, he'd definitely kill Lin Feng. I'll wait for you to try. Lin Feng's words were clear even though the distance between them had grown. He had already started walking away and his silhouette was gradually disappearing. Shuiyu frowned. He looked at Lu Yuan with an ice-cold glare and said furiously, Lu Yuan, I cannot believe your ignorance today. You will truly regret your actions today, you will do nothing but regret these actions. When he finished talking, Shuiyu brushed the dust from his sleeve and left. How ridiculous was Lu Yuan acting? Did he really think that supporting Wen Renyan was the right thing to do? That it would be useful to him in the future? Did he not understand how greatly the protectors and the Patriarch valued Lin Feng? If he had truly known the situation, then he would not have had the same attitude when dealing with Lin Feng. I never regret anything that I do, said Lu Yuan, showing everyone that he was not scared of any repercussions, and then said to Wen Renyan, "What a pity that we had to let him go." "Don't worry, he will die sooner or later," said Wen Renyan. His words were like those of a venomous snake. He was gazing with a venomous stare into the distance where Lin Feng had left. When Lin Feng left, Liu Fei had surprisingly followed him. Saying that Liu Fei was his girlfriend and his possession had caused him to be humiliated after everything that Lin Feng and Liu Fei had said. "Lin Feng," Liu Fei quickly caught up with Lin Feng and shouted out to him. "Ha, I just remembered that I had things to do and that I had to leave with Pajun." When Han Man saw that Liu Fei was coming towards them, a huge smile appeared on his face. Then he quickly pulled Pajun and ran ahead to give the couple some privacy. Judging from his actions, you would hardly believe he had been injured only moments ago. Lin Feng's eyes rolled. That sneaky guy. How could he suddenly have become so crafty? "Lin Feng, please be careful next time. If you see Wen Renyan, please avoid a conflict with him. Stay away from him at all costs. That guy is very dangerous," Liu Fei warned Lin Feng. She knew that Wen Renyan would try to kill Lin Feng if he had the opportunity in the future. "I thought that you hated me. How come you suddenly care about me now?" said Lin Feng while laughing as if he had ignored Liu Fei's warning. Liu Fei was speechless. That guy was surprisingly in the mood to make jokes. She knew how terrifying Wen Renyan was and the status that he held. "I just don't want you to die because you have to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, that's all," said Liu Fei while staring at Lin Feng. "Is that so? But I have never said that I was going to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu." Lin Feng continued, "Now that I think about it, I do remember that you said something about you being my girlfriend." "I just said it because of the situation," said Fei resolutely while staring at Lin Feng without blinking. That guy had dared to bring up an embarrassing situation again. She just wanted to show to everyone that Wen Renyan was a liar. She wanted him to stop creating lies about her and humiliate him at the same time. "Can you really just say such things just because of the situation?" asked Lin Feng, whose eyes were rolling. His hand started moving towards Liu Fei. "What are you doing?" Liu Fei felt a chill down her spine and vigilantly looked at Lin Feng. "That guy. You're my girlfriend now. I should start behaving like a proper boyfriend would with his girlfriend. As your boyfriend I have certain duties to fulfill," said Lin Feng as he was moving towards Liu Fei in a peculiar motion. "You bastard. Dream on." Liu Fei's face was flushed completely red. She was furious and embarrassed. She immediately stormed off. That bastard. What did he mean by, "a boyfriend has duties to fulfill," and he then dares say he's not a pervert? Lin Feng observed Liu Fei as she walked away. Her body was incredibly graceful with each movement. He had a tender smile on his face. His impression that Liu Fei was a bad person was disappearing with each day. He now had a very good impression of her and had started to grow fond of her. She was actually very cute. There was no one who could deny that she was incredibly beautiful and grew more attractive with each day. How come I never noticed this before? Lin Feng thought with a smile on his face. When he had first arrived in this world, he thought it was a very cold and ruthless world. His determination, willpower and strength were the only things he could rely on. Now he was beginning to feel familiar in this world and he was gradually becoming more relaxed. Sometimes, he was a bit unconventional or a bit insolent, but he had to make others respect him through force or he would be bullied for the rest of his life. He has chosen to never serve beneath anyone and be bullied again. Lin Feng's determination and willpower was truly incredible for a cultivator. He was proud of his sword skills and there was a determination to improve his sword skills while growing stronger. He wanted to grow stronger. A pleasant and warm light was illuminating the ground. On that day, the Yun Hai Sect looked absolutely desolate. There was almost nobody that could be seen. But in a distant place it wasn't desolate at all, within the Stormy Gorge. The Stormy Gorge was filled with all members of the Yun Hai Sect. Again they looked like a colony of ants, they were all being pushed shoulder to shoulder. The elite elders and the ordinary elders were not sitting inside the gorge, they were now upon a high seating area which could see the life and death arena from above. This seating area was grand and imposing to all those who looked upon it. It was entirely made out of stone. The view made Lin Feng sigh in admiration. He remembered the stadiums in his previous life and thought that the seating area in the stormy gorge was even more fantastic. The Yun Hai Sect usually didn't use this seating area often, but this time they wanted to show everyone how important the Elite Disciple exam was. It was the beginning of the second round of the Elite Disciple exam. The Ordinary Disciple ranking list had 100 names, the Elite Disciple list had 81 and the Core Disciple list only had 36 names. But it was clear to everyone that the Ordinary Disciple ranking list would lose a great deal of power when the strongest Ordinary Disciples joined the Elite Disciples. Indeed, the Ordinary Disciple ranking list would lose the strongest disciples. This is why people particularly enjoyed watching the Elite Disciple and Core Disciple ranking. By looking at the ranking lists, it was possible to understand how powerful each of the disciples were. By understanding how powerful the disciples were, it was possible to know how strong the sect currently was. After all, the disciples were the future of the sect. Nan Gongling had suddenly stood up. Everyone had quickly become completely silent. Nan Gongling slightly smiled and then started talking. But at that moment, he looked surprised and frowned. He was staring into the distance at a storm of violent clouds on the horizon. There was a strangely violent air approaching. The sea of violent clouds rushed across the sky like a wave crashing into the ocean. Nan Gongling, that is Chu Qing from the Haoyu sect. He is carrying a group of people with him. The clouds were crashing through the sky and making terrifying booms. The air was shaking with the pressure. The sound of crashing was so loud that it entered the ears of the disciples and seemed to pierce through into their souls. How terrifyingly powerful! Everybody was staring in amazement looking at the group of people who were approaching. They looked like they were surfing on the violent clouds. At the same time, the sky was growing cloudy and snowflakes seemed to be falling from the clear sky above. Han Shui Tian of Ice and Snow Village Mountain has come to pay a visit. There was a powerful voice which was echoing through the snow. The voice was accompanied by a sudden strong snowfall. Everyone started feeling cold. Han Shui Tian was the Patriarch of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village. Duan Wu Tian and Ting Wu Shan have also come to pay a visit. More voices were heard within the snow. A storm of raging clouds was heading towards them on the horizon and snow was filling the atmosphere around them. Everybody was shaking from the cold and also the fear of the power which was being displayed. The scariest was that cold air was filled with a terrifying sword qi. It was extremely sharp and seemed like it was ready to pierce through flesh at any moment. However, the source could not be seen. In the distance there was a black shadow moving through the sky, it was a colossal monster which was completely black from head to toe. With each flap of its wings it created a vacuum in the air. That colossal pitch-black monster had a length of a few dozen meters and about 4 meters thick. The people who were riding it were wearing changpaos which blew elegantly in the wind. That wild beast was a python fish which could fly through the sky and swim to the deepest ocean. Its scales were pitch black and it had gigantic wings on its back. It was a very strange creature and mysterious creature. What a horrible-looking monster! Everybody was stupefied staring blankly at that python fish. It was swallowing clouds and blowing out a dark fog with each breath. What terrified the crowd even more was that around his huge wings was the same incredible amount of sword qi. No one knew where this terrifying sword qi was coming from. Suddenly everyone could see a gigantic sword flying in the air, there was a silhouette standing atop the sword with an arrogant smile. Nan Gongling's expression was gradually becoming ice-cold. The expression in his eyes was as sharp as a sword as he looked at the crowd in front of him. Nan Gongling's expression was gradually becoming ice-cold. The expression in his eyes was as sharp as a sword as he looked at the crowd in front of him. Chu Qing was the patriarch of the Hao sect. He was Chu Zhanpeng's father. Han Shuetian was the patriarch of the Ice and Snow Mountain village. Teng Wushan was the vice-patriarch of the Mo Shou sect. Duan Tianlang was the prince of the imperial family and was also Duan Han's father, who had come to the Yun Hai sect recently and been thrown out. All these people belonged to some of the most powerful sects and clans. They had come during the elite disciple exam, and it did not feel like they had come with good intentions. Patriarch Nan Gongling, all of these people coming to visit on the same day, this is a bit strange. Duan Tianlang was the person standing on the gigantic sword. He was wearing a magnificent plate of armor which made him look like a majestic ruler. The gigantic sword began to lose altitude and moved towards the viewing platform, accompanied by the sound of the atmosphere tearing under its pressure. At the same time, Chu Qing and Han Shuetian were also slowly moving down to the platform while looking extremely condescending. Next to Duan Tianlang, Duan Han was staring at Nan Gongling, looking indifferent. Nan Gongling had recently humiliated him and told him to leave the Yun Hai sect. Now he held a grudge against Nan Gongling and wanted to teach him a lesson. Oh he, it is an honor for me to receive Duan Tianlang within the Yun Hai sect. Please feel at home, said Nan Gongling with a cold smile across his face, and he then added, it is only that we didn't expect you to bring so many people. What brings you all to my Yun Hai sect? Not so long ago, that boy, Duan Han, already visited you. The purpose of his visit was also very clear to you. His Majesty sees the things that we cannot. Therefore, he is preparing to finish building the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Thus, he requires some of the most outstanding disciples within the country. All of the sects have already replied and chosen some of their disciples except for the Yun Hai sect. When he finished talking, Duan Tianlang smiled and didn't add anything else. Huh? Nan Gongling was making a strange face. Chu Qing, Han Shuetian and all these people were extremely powerful. Their children were also extremely talented. If they sent disciples there, then they would be under the control of the imperial clan and as a consequence, would not belong to the Yun Hai sect in the future. But Chu Qing noticed that Duan Tianlang had been talking in a very calm and soft tone, which was why Nan Gongling hadn't understood what he meant. Alright, what does Duan Tianlang propose to do? Asked Nan Gongling. Since Nan Gongling hasn't been willing to hand over some of his best disciples, I personally came on behalf of His Majesty to select some myself. Today is the day of the elite disciple exam within the Yun Hai sect. I'll be able to see your strongest disciples with my own eyes and select them one after the other, said Duan Tianlang in a strict manner. The facial expression of every member of the Yun Hai sect suddenly changed. How savage! What kind of place did they think the Yun Hai sect was? What gave them the right to choose geniuses as they pleased? What happens if I don't agree? Said Nan Gongling as his voice grew colder. Nan Gongling will agree just like all the other patriarchs had to agree, said Duan Tianlang as he was filled with confidence. He was talking as if his word was law and no one could refute him. Nan Gongling isn't hurrying to select disciples because of the elite disciple exam, but he shouldn't disagree too fast either. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu will not accept mediocre disciples. It will only accept the best and most outstanding disciples of the entire Shuiyu country. They will give them access to the best profound pills, the best weapons and the best teachers available. Resources will be almost endless. There will also be the possibility to learn the most powerful skills available. They will be able to choose between an enormous amount of martial skills and they will truly become the pillars of the country. Duan Tianlang was saying those words to all the disciples of the Yun Hai sect. He was trying to tempt them with the vast wealth. Gaining access to an unlimited quantity of weapons, pills and skills, all disciples of the Yun Hai sect would obviously tempted, who would refuse such a wonderful opportunity. They came to the Yun Hai sect for the sake of cultivation. They wanted to become powerful. If the holy courtyard of Shuiyu could provide them with a better cultivation environment as well as much better cultivation facilities, what reasons did they have to stay in the Yun Hai Sect? At that moment, many disciples became restless. Many disciples were prepared to give their utmost to be accepted into the holy courtyard. How despicable! Nan Gongling cursed. Duan Tianlang, who was trying to cause a rift within the Yun Hai Sect. It was truly a cunning and ruthless plan. What Nan Gongling found even more intolerable is that they were clearly provoking the Yun Hai Sect with these actions. I'm curious to see who would dare to oppose the Yun Hai Sect, thought Nan Gongling. He then looked at Duan Tianlang and said, since Duan Tianlang wants to watch the elite disciple exam, I will allow you to stay and watch. The ranked battles for the ordinary disciple and the core disciples are postponed for another day. Today, only elite disciples can fight. The crowd burst into an uproar when they heard Nan Gong, but a short instant after, they understood why he had made that decision. The ordinary disciples were too weak, so the Yun Hai Sect would lose face. The core disciples were the heart of the Yun Hai Sect and he could not afford to lose these disciples. There wouldn't be much time before a core disciple could become a new pillar within the sect. In addition, it wouldn't be wise to show the strength of the core disciples to the unwelcome guests. Therefore, showing the elite disciples was the most suitable decision. Duan Tianlang was smiling. Would Nan Gongling's actions make any difference? Elite disciples, go into the life and death arena and make a line in the order as indicated by the ranking list, said Nan Gongling. The elite disciples, whose name was in the list of the ranking list, composed of 81 disciples. The entire crowd was staring at them with admiration. They would have the chance to bring honor to themselves and the sect. I will also change the rules of the second round of the elite disciple exam. If you want to be in the ranking list, you must challenge someone who is already on the ranking list. If you win, you will be ranked. No disciple can be challenged twice. Nan Gongling continued to talk. The crowd burst into an uproar again. A multitude of people was disappointed and had given up all hope. This round was a chance for disciples to test themselves and their own strength. However, because of the new rule, the exam had changed. Many disciples would no longer have the chance to test themselves against the elite disciples. These battles will all be fought to the death. There are no restrictions. Boom. That shocking sentence was like a bomb exploding in everyone's head. No restrictions. To the death. If they challenged the stronger of the elite disciples, then they could lose the battle and their life along with it. There was no option to give up. They would be slaughtered. A victory meant being able to see one's name in the elite disciple ranking list. Losing had serious consequences to the extent that an opponent without mercy could end your life. That was a big price to pay for losing. Dangerous. Gambling with one's life at stake is too dangerous. I'll just try again next year. A countless number of disciples were shaking their heads after the previous statement. Many of them agreed on the fact that risking one's life in order to join the ranking list was not a worthwhile risk. Lin Feng, the Patriarch, is really cruel. I just joined the elite disciples, but I am also only at the first Ling Qi layer. On that list composed of 81 names, the weakest have already broken through to the second Ling Qi layer. I have no chance for winning at all. Han Man was smiling wryly. He thought he was going to get the chance to fight as much as he could during the elite disciple exam, but hadn't expected that things would turn out this way. Lin Feng had a different feeling. These new rules would probably lead to incredible battles. Not only were those who were going to join brave, but they would also be the most outstanding members of the sect. Only those outstanding disciples would risk their life. That is what Nan Gongling wanted to see. He wanted to show these people how strong his disciples were. All the 81 disciples on the ranking list are now on the fighting stage in the life and death arena. Now you can challenge any of them and go on to the fighting stage of the middle. When Nan Gongling finished talking, he sat down and observed Duan Tianlang. Luo Lai is willing to challenge Yu Lin to a battle. a silhouette stepped onto the fighting stage. Because it was impossible to challenge the same person twice, the first person had a huge advantage over the other disciples as he could challenge someone who was very low in the rankings. Yu Lin was the 81st ranked disciple. At that moment, Yu Lin had an ugly facial expression. Being the first one to be challenged, that was such a humiliation. Whoever chooses to challenge us ranked disciples, death will be your punishment, said Ren Wenyan, who was standing in front of everyone else on the fighting stage. He had made it clear to all disciples with his cold tone that the ranked disciples would kill all their challengers. Agreed, said Yu Ling as he jumped onto the fighting stage. He immediately started to unleash all of his skills using his full power. Even if Wen Ren Yan hadn't said, Yu Lin had already planned to kill his opponent. The stormy gorge became particularly calm. The crowd was watching the fighting stage within the life and death arena. The fighting stage was entirely red with blood. Lying on the fighting stage was a pile of corpses. All of these corpses were the corpses of the challengers. They had all lost and been killed without exception. They did not remove the corpses but left them there as a reminder to anyone who issued a challenge. This would be the place where they entered their eternal rest. Losing your challenge would mean certain death. The lesson was cruel and bloody. Gradually, those who were eager to challenge these ranked disciples were slowly dwindling. The disciples who had been challenged were the ones at the bottom of the ranking. From that moment, if someone else wanted to challenge these ranked elite disciples, they had to challenge those who were even higher in the ranking list. As expected from the ranked elite disciples, none of them was mediocre. Even Yu Lin, who was ranked 81, was exceptionally strong. Nan Gongling was still sitting indifferently looking at the fighting stage. That bloody lesson was going to show these young disciples how hard, cruel, and brutal the path of cultivation was. On the path of cultivation, only those who had a persistent heart, as well as a determination and willpower as solid as rock, could march forward courageously. Those who had a fear of blood would not last long on the path of cultivation. Those who were too kind-hearted would be killed for their foolishness. This was not a world to be underestimated with light-hearted ideals. A bunch of crappy cultivators trying in vain to be ranked is enough to make you all so desperate and hopeless. When Ren Yen said while pointing at the 5 corpses on the stage. He then glanced evilly at the entire crowd looking extremely. He was mocking every elite disciple who was not within the ranking. He was the top-ranked elite disciple and none of these 5 people were worth his time. All the elite disciples were furious but at the same time they felt powerless. They couldn't believe Wen Ren Yan's harsh words, but he was a genius whose power was acknowledged by everybody. There were very few people who would dare to provoke him. Patriarch, I think that you can establish the new ranking list now. They are all pathetic and hopeless. When Ren Yan was looking at Nan Gongling as he hurled insults at the other elite disciples to make himself look better. Nan Gongling looked around at the crowd and slightly nodded. When Ren Yan was really highly arrogant, but he was right, the Yun Hai Sect didn't have that many geniuses. Inevitably, he would sooner or later become one of the pillars of the sect. Ridiculous, you truly are laughable. A loud voice was heard spreading through the atmosphere. It made the crowd shiver. Wen Ren Yan was surprised. He looked around to see who had said these words to him. You again, said Wen Ren Yan with murderous intentions in his eyes. What is so ridiculous? You're the top-ranked elite disciple. Yet you are still extremely presumptuous. You look down on other disciples while calling them names, calling them crap, but at the beginning when you started practicing cultivation, were you as strong as now? Were you born as an unrivaled master of the Lin Qi layer? Have you ever considered that to others, you might be the crappy cultivator? Lin Feng had a cold smile on the corner of his mouth as he continued to hurl insults. Wen Ren Yan was extremely arrogant. Lin Feng had said these words to make him aware that the world is bigger than what he knows. When Ren Yan was like the frog stuck in the well, he did not know how vast the sky was.